council members will be before public comments, and the WTA will be before public comments. We have a 1 hour limit this month.
Thank you.
That's right. All right, so we will call our meeting back to order in public session. We just had our closed session, it's just finished. And we have returned to open session. First part is approval of the minutes from the previous 3 meetings. Yes, we have 3 meetings.
I move we accept all 3 minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Judy, any changes, additions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Then an approval of the agenda with the one change that the student report and the teacher's update will be moved ahead of public comments. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
Motion to approve as stated.
Second.
And a second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That then takes us to the student report. And we have 2 students.
Hello.
Hello. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Thanks, Anna.
Pretty good. Okay, as you know, I'm Anna and I'm Quinn. So for student council, in the past month, just last week we had the blood drive and that went really well. I think we nearly filled all the donors. So that went really well. And on Halloween we had Chick or Can, which is like a donation to the food drive, and that also went really well even with the restrictions that we had this year. So we still got a lot of donations for both of those. And then we don't have a ton planned for this upcoming month for student council, but soon, I think this week or next week, we're going to have a new student lunch, which is something we usually do in person in school, but now we think we're going to do a virtual new student lunch, just so the new students can kind of get to know student council members and more people from the school. And then because of the restrictions and the limits that student council can do this year with their volunteer activities, we're going to try to make it a big focus of ours to kind of take advantage of social media to connect with the student body and community and even middle school students or parents. And we're going to do different activities on our social medias, and I think we're even going to start a website. So we're going to be posting, like I said, activities and updates, and then also even school tips for virtual learning. So we're starting that. We started that this weekend. Next week in advisory, we're going to have a little presentation on that. So those are our plans for this month for student council.
Yes, and just to add on to the Instagram part, if any of you guys would like to follow, it's Key Stuco on Instagram. So I just wanted to add that. Along with just everything going on in the school, aside from just student council, we have Spanish Honor Society getting back in action, and they're working on an enrichment opportunity for intermediate schoolers and younger kids, like an activity that the high school Spanish Honor Society members are putting together just to teach younger students specific things about the language, like the geography or the culture, and just to teach them words by doing activities. And that goes on. It went on the past few Wednesdays, and I believe the next 2 Wednesdays as well. So that's been going very well. And I just would like to add, I don't know if you guys have heard, you probably have, about the Peace Walk going on November 22nd. And it's been going really well with planning. A lot of clubs, especially the ones that I'm involved in, have been really working towards the Peace Walk. And so, do you guys know what the Peace Walk is and what's going on?
No.
Alright, so I don't know if the word has gotten out too much, but it is a community, the community is getting together, and the high school specifically is planning it, just club members are in charge of planning it, and it's a nonpartisan way for the community to unite after all of these hard times that have been, that the community and just the nation has been going through. So it's just a way for everybody to unite. WNC will be supplying, I believe, food, and there will just be a gathering, social distancing at the Village Center at 4 p.m. on Sunday, November 22nd. And you must register beforehand, and I believe you can contact somebody about the registering. I will follow up with anybody who has any questions about that. And then the students will be volunteering there just to provide a route direction, because there will be a walk around town which will lead to the village park, and which will allow the lighting of the rotary lights along with just some speeches going on, and there will be a lighting of lanterns into the sky. So it's just going to be a really, really nice way for everybody to get together and kind of just to see everybody again and just get involved. So a lot of students are getting involved with that along with social media. Please let me or Quid know if you guys have any questions about that. And we just want to add, going back to the school part, NHS is also getting involved in the Peace Walk. So they're just like making a bigger part of it. And there will also be a WNC supply drive that NHS is hosting, which will be going on late November, which they are putting together. And just one more thing about the in-person labs that are currently going on. There for AP Bio, I don't think physics has been having any, and human anatomy, along with any other hands-on activities. We've talked to a lot of students, and they have really loved the hands-on labs. So thank you guys for that, and it's just been a really, really nice experience for the students to have and to get back. That is really all that we have to talk to you guys about for this month. Any questions?
Thank you so much for coming. It's such
Yeah,
a,
of course.
it almost sounds like school is school.
Oh yeah, it's been really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Of course. Have a good night, guys.
See you next month.
Thank you so much.
Is there a WPA?
Here comes Ashley.
It's Ashley. There she is.
Love your notes. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks. Well, thank you for the listening sessions, both past and future. I know staff really appreciate the chance to kind of talk candidly about their experiences, and that's very much appreciated.
I know it's not supposed to be so much back and forth, but I would encourage, we just signed up for the building meetings. So despite that Zoom that we have, if you can really encourage those who wish to participate to do so, it'd be helpful for us.
Absolutely. I know we just had our WTA leadership team meeting, and we talked about, I knew about Heritage and Intermediate because I'm on their calendars and on their emails, but I definitely told them to look for communication regarding upcoming listening sessions at their buildings as well. Let's see. Just some kind of fun, exciting things that have been happening. There was a food drive at the intermediate school, and to celebrate that, they did their annual pieing of staff members. This time it was outdoors, socially distanced. If you ever get a chance to watch the video, it's kind of fun seeing pies fly off to the side with the wind. Not so many face shots as normal. There's also the intermediate school released a great video about behind the scenes of the teaching staff, and I've heard that the rest of the buildings are going to do something similar. So we'll make sure to share those videos when they are created. Otherwise, just know that teaching staff, we're doing our best. It's not always easy because we get those emails, just like I know community members do too. But we really are trying to do our best to maintain not only high levels of academics, but high levels of collaboration and high levels of getting to know our students as well.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank
We
you.
do really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
I appreciate you making my notes look so much more disorganized than yours.
I saw yours, I didn't even bother sending mine.
Oh. Well, I didn't have to talk, I was
I'm
I was
quitting.
just typing away. Okay, well, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ashley.
And that takes us to the comments.
Hello, everyone. Marcus Richter, 4649 Conroe DM. I'm the girls basketball coach and a FIA teacher at the high school. I'm here tonight just to kind of talk about why I and our athletes think that we should be having a winter sports season. I want to start out by talking about how contact days, how we had them. We ran 5 of them. We practiced social distancing. We practiced all the safety measures. And everything went really, really well. I heard from the kids, I heard from parents how positive an experience it was for them to just get back in the gym and to just be around their teammates. All right. This winter, my biggest concern, if we're not allowed to compete as athletes here with Waunakee, is that currently there's already a league set up, ready to be played in the Dells. That's going to take Dane County teams. They're going to play them. There's not going to be anybody regulating what the safety measures are. Our kids are going to play, all right? They're going to find a way to play. The issues then become, I either have to delay the start of the season to let my varsity kids play in that league and put the younger kids at risk, by not being able to play. We're leaving them behind. We're not including them in the grand scheme of playing basketball as Waunakee. Or I either start the season right on time, and then I put my varsity players, especially the seniors who have spent, their whole lives waiting for this season. I make them have to choose between playing basketball, which they want to do, or play with us and not be able to compete. And I really truly think that a lot of them are going to choose to go play in the Dells and lose their WI eligibility or delay the start of the season. All right. How we can make it work, we've shown it with contact days. Safety measures are in place, the daily health check, the hand sanitizer, the wiping the ball down, the social distancing, all the safety measures that the coaches are regulating. All right. Coaches will also be encouraging the families, encouraging the players to make good choices, to not go to the social gatherings, to wear masks in public, to not make unnecessary trips, to not make unnecessary travels. There's coaches who are going to be watching over these kids, kind of guiding them to make good choices and to limit their exposure to COVID. All right. The other thing is, the biggest thing is when they go play in these tournaments as AAU teams or in the Wisconsin Dells Leagues, they're playing 3 or 4 or 5 teams, different teams every single day. They could be from Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, whoever. If they're with us, they're playing 1 team a night. And it's probably really, it's 2 teams in a week that they're playing. And they're working as a team and all that little stuff. All right. Kind of how we mentioned is, sports give these guys a reason to make those positive changes for COVID, to keep COVID out of our community.
I'm sorry, sir, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. I'm just asking, give our players a chance. They're willing to take the necessary steps to make the season work. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
She's informing them.
My name is Heather Raffel. Some of you know me as Heather Martins. Mr. Hetzel was my English teacher. Mrs. Enzeng was my math teacher. So I do know some people in here. I don't see Aaron in here, but he's probably listening somewhere. I'm also the cross-country coach at the high school for boys and girls. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to have a season this year. It was very difficult, I would say, but from what I experienced early in the summer with some kids who had been out of school and then the first few weeks in, there's a lot of mental issues with some of our kids. And having the season and having some sort of normalcy back in was awesome. And I look at it as kind of a 40% season. We didn't have everything that we needed to have in a regular season, but just having something was awesome. And I just wanted to come in and say thank you. I applaud you guys for all the effort that you've been putting forward. Honestly, my optics of having a season and having kids in a virtual sense is a little skewed because
my husband's antibody deficient. So I've been through this before. So on behalf of our team, our parents, our coaches, thank you. I also want to say, he isn't here, is Mr. Borowski and Erin May. The amount of effort, the time, the empathy that I received from both of them was excellent. Erin, you know, I would call him at 9, 10 o'clock at night. Do you have an issue? How do we get through this? He's always there, always an ear to listen and to understand. So I thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On a side note, my son is an excellent math student. He's at 97% math. English, I was told I was the worst student and the best student you ever had. Someone told me that you mentioned that. My son is now an honors student at Middleton in English. So I've seen it from both ends as far as the kids and the dynamics of kids, and just having some sort of normalcy has been awesome this fall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a tough time.
Good evening. I'm Sandy Meeker. My address is 6513 Harvest Moon Court. My husband Tim and I are parents of 2 high school seniors and an 8th grader here in the district. We want to first thank everybody here and the teachers and staff for all the work that you're doing and the time that you're putting in. We realize that this year is not an easy one for any of you. Tonight I want to talk a little bit about the return to athletics, specifically obviously the winter season. We're not denying or disputing the seriousness of COVID, but we also know that statistically this age group is at a lower health risk. What we've witnessed is a larger risk to our students' mental health during the pandemic. We are seeing screen time increased and very few outlets for them to get social interaction and physical activity. Since March, our athletes have faced significant changes, canceled seasons, numerous delays, and they've continued to hold out hope that they have a sports season this winter. With colder weather, shorter days, and continued cancellations, we're going to see a further decline in the mental health of our students. Our student athletes want to compete for their school because it brings them pride to represent the district and the community. There are many talented athletes who are passionate about playing a sport, and they'll find a way to play, whether it's forming their own team, playing the AAU circuit, or finding a club, which means that they're going to be exposed to larger numbers and more potential for illness. The district can make it much safer by putting in place proper safety protocols that will allow for safe competition this winter. The athletes need to be allowed to not only practice but compete. As an athlete, this is where the stretch and the growth comes from. They learn how to never give up, find the strength, and always find a way to push through. These behaviors not only apply to athletics, but they cross over into the academic and adult world. These are behaviors that we really need to see in every person right now. Coach Richter and his staff have spent countless hours developing plans to provide a safe and competitive season for these girls that play for him. We ask that you give him the opportunity to share as he advocates for a season for his players. There are things that can be done to mitigate the risk, and with proper procedures in place, communication, every athlete and parent can work to make sure it's safe. This has been shown through the most recent contact days we've had. The kids are willing to do what it takes to get back their passion, and there are many parents in the community that are willing to help. We understand that your number one task is to provide a safe environment for our students. This is an incredible task at hand. Living and learning through a computer screen is not sustainable for these kids, and they need to be provided activities with proven benefits. There are methods to mitigate risk which can allow for competitive participation in activities. These kids have learned to not take anything for granted, and we believe that this is motivation for them to follow whatever protocol is developed and asked of them. As parents, we're asking you to consider the winter athletic season as an opportunity to give athletes a place to get physical activity, connect socially, and overall offer a way to improve their mental health. Thanks for considering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Nowski. I live at 1012 South Division Street, and I am a mathematics teacher and wrestling coach here at Waunakee High School. I'd like to start by saying thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts with you about the upcoming winter sports season. As I ask myself why I teach and coach, the reason is simple. It's for the kids that I have a chance to have a positive impact on in their lives. I take this responsibility very seriously. As I am a coach, I'm also responsible for the members of my team, not only on the wrestling mat, but also in the classroom. I have to wear many hats when coaching, not just teaching them technique and motivating them, but also serving as both an academic advisor and counselor. Coaching gives me the power to help students academically. Athletics is an extension of the classroom. I monitor their grades on a regular basis, and I meet with them before and after practice to talk about their grades. In just the past week, I've called some of my athletes to check on their academics and see what I can do to help to improve their grades during this time when some students are lacking motivation within the classroom. Other teachers have come to me when they need help with students on the wrestling team. I believe in my coaching career that I've had athletes that without wrestling, they would not have committed themselves to passing their classes so they could be eligible for wrestling. In this process, they have passed their classes and they've received their credits enough to graduate. Yes, wrestling is a contact sport, and I know that in the time we are right now, there's a risk for the spread of COVID-19. The kids that have signed up for wrestling are aware of this risk and are trusting the coaching staff in school to provide them with an opportunity to compete as safely as possible and do everything correctly. We cannot eliminate the risk of COVID, but we can minimize it. In wrestling, we've already been practicing some of the safety measures that we are being added this year. We've been disinfecting the wrestling room before and after every practice and competition for years, including a disinfectant that does kill the virus and prevent the spread of COVID. We do safe hygiene and perform health checks before all competitions. I know that contact tracing has been one of the biggest concerns. Yes, wrestling requires athletes to come within 6 feet of each other to compete and fully practice. However, wrestling is a one-on-one sport. During a competition, only 2 wrestlers will be on the mat at a time. Each wrestler in a team will only have one contact with one individual from another team to wrestle a 6-minute match. We can socially distance then ourselves from everyone else on the opposing team except for that one individual they're competing. We can also do this in our room, in our practice room, where we can split our kids to practice with the same partner for the entire week with the same individual night in and night out. The WIA has already put in rules to limit our competitions. We're only allowed to have dual meets this year. They've taken away our tournaments, and we must wait 6 days before we can between competitions. Thus, we are not allowed to compete in any regular season tournaments. Typically, we get 7 duels and 7 tournaments, and we're losing those tournaments. Our kids are going to lose about 75% of their matches during the regular season. So thank you for this time and for listening to me. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Hi guys. So my name's Petra. I'm a senior on the Waunakee varsity dance team. So I'd first like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak here today, and my coaches for letting me talk on behalf of the team. I am going to talk to you guys today about the possibility for dance team competing this season. So, for those of you who may be unfamiliar, our team consists of 20 Waunakee High School students, ranging from 9th grade to seniors. We typically compete on an average of a series of invitationals, which are like mini competitions leading up to regionals, which is our biggest competition, and then state. In not only our team dances, but also in solos. So competitions are an important aspect for our team because they provide a measurement of our hard work and skills that we've accumulated throughout the years. We are not only judged on choreography and execution of our skills, but we are also judged on the presentation of each specific number. So how we smile, how we present each thing, make it entertaining pretty much. We are then provided with critiques that not only better our own dance abilities, but better how we train as a team and as a whole. Besides this, competitions provide a shared goal amongst the team that not only bonds us to one another, but is the epitome of our dance team experience. Competitions provide opportunities for memories to be formed that will stay with each dancer through their entire life. I remember the first time taking the state stage. It was my freshman year, and I never felt so much pride and respect for representing the Waunakee community. I literally get chills and I shake because of it, because it's just such an amazing experience. And it crushes me that some of my teammates might not get to experience that. And it also really crushes me that my fellow seniors and I might not get this opportunity to take the floor one more time. For anyone who may not know, we compete through an organization called the Wisconsin Association of Cheer and Pom Coaches, or WACPC, so not WIA. In response to the pandemic, WACPC has set a series of COVID guidelines for any competition that is sponsored by them. Along with requiring temperature and mandatory health screenings prior to entering each competition, they also require social distancing, limited contact between dancers, face masks, and sanitation requirements. To specify, the limited contact between dancers is for the style of dance called kick, which is where they are locked between each other, but our team does not participate in kick, so you don't have to worry about contact for us. With these safety guidelines, I would like to urge the board to allow us to compete for this season. It benefits our mental health. We had a meeting this past weekend because we finally got confirmation to practice. And I know that a lot of the girls were really stressing how much dance is like an outlet for them. It lets them release because we're not leaving our houses. We're stuck in the same room all day doing school. We're there for all day pretty much, doing homework at night. We don't really leave. Some of them have jobs, so they get to leave for that part, but really dance is an outlet for a lot of them. So I think it would really benefit their mental health for us to compete for a shared goal and get to create those memories as a team. So yeah, if you guys have any other further questions for me, I feel free to get in my way, but otherwise, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Dana McKenzie, 1425 Shenandoah Drive in Waunakee. I have a 5th grader and an 8th grader as a parent, and starting my 18th year as boys basketball coach here. First want to thank you for allowing us to have contact days. We started those last Saturday, exactly 240 days after the last time we saw our players as a group. If you could see their faces, you would have loved it. It was just good to be back in the gym as a team. Came here 18 years ago. There was a culture here, and what we've created here in athletics with all of our sports is pretty special. Kids grow up to be Waunakee Warriors and to play in that jersey, and they have pride in that, and our community does too. The other thing about Waunakee is this district has become leaders. You guys have an opportunity tonight, and it's not easy, and we appreciate everything you guys do. But there's a lot of people watching to see what Waunakee does as far as athletic goes, and they will follow. And I think as leaders of the area, I think we can do this safely. We can give these kids a chance under our watch, where we control the protocols, we control where they go, we control who they play, as opposed to leagues that are set up just waiting to see what happens. There's a club league for boys, Minnesota, Illinois, and Wisconsin, that will start immediately after all the Dane County schools pretty much decide if they can play. That will allow a few of our kids to play. It'll be outside of our area, we can't control anything, and it will leave out more of our kids that want to be Waunakee Warriors. There's a lot of challenges that we all know with COVID, but my hope is that we can all work together with solutions on how to overcome the challenges and give our kids a chance. One thing about our program is we've had, you can probably count on one hand, the amount of code violations in 18 years in our program. Part of that is because our guys play for a common goal together, they become a family. 240 days is a long time. My ask is that you give us a chance. We'll work together to follow the protocols, but our hope is that our 10 seniors have a chance to play for a common goal as Waunakee Warriors. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Dana.
A little different than the last time I was here. Robert McPherson, I'm resident here in Waunakee. I have a student in, wow. My daughter is a student in the 4K program at one of partner sites, Brilliant Beginnings. I'm here tonight, obviously like many parents, talking about school opening. You might be wondering why I have such an opinion about school openings that, when my daughter is actually getting in-person instruction. I'm here about school opening because it's come to my attention that there may be a rather large, well not large, but loud contingent, but small contingent of parents that have decided to take it upon themselves to declare that they are representing the community and the community's desire to open things up. I did an open records request. I'm sorry, Dave. It was your emails that I pulled. I figured the president would have the best shot. I see some parents' names on here. For the sake of decency, I won't name them out loud in this meeting, but I'm disappointed because there are many of us in the community who feel that schools should not yet open. I was very publicly against schools opening in the beginning, although I will admit the statistics on the younger kids has proven me wrong. But when it comes to middle school, intermediate school, high school, we're not there. Our numbers are insanely high. This Waunakee is leading the way in the wrong way in this case. We're bringing a lot of numbers in the village. People who live here aren't taking it seriously. The police department doesn't take it seriously. The village board is taking no action. We're spending more money on trying to get people to go out and frequent businesses rather than focus on actually trying to limit COVID exposure. So what does that have to do with the school district? I'm worried about teachers. I'm worried about the spillover into daycare centers. I need a daycare center. I have a four-year-old still. And if I lose my daycare center, that's going to be a problem for me. And my daycare center is working its behind off on making sure that they stay open and clean while still serving 4K. We know that other kids have siblings, that it can spread around really easily. It's only a matter of time before their facility has a positive case. It's not if, it's when. If we can't prove that we can take it seriously at what we have open now, there is absolutely no way that we should be opening any further. We're going to have a lot of sick people. We're going to have long haul COVID patients. We cannot consider this. And I'm just going to throw in there, I heard some people talking about winter sports and things like that. Yeah, just because they're doing it in other parts of the state doesn't mean that you should just bend over and, I'm sorry, kowtow. That was highly inappropriate. You should kowtow to somebody that is saying, they're just going to go play somewhere else. Well, you know what? You don't reward people that try to hold you hostage, with their bad decisions. Please don't ruin it for the rest of the community. There's some of us that are sick and tired of being home for the past 8 months, but we've been doing it right. Please, we parents acknowledge that we respect the work that you're doing, but please move with caution if you go any further past this point, because it's bad. It's really bad. Wisconsin's third in the nation per capita. We don't need to take any more risks than we've already taken. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are at 8:39 out of 8:15, so we do have a couple to be read. First is from Heather Smith. Hello, I have children in both 5th and 6th grades and have been following the vote to resume in-person instruction. I would love for my children to return in-person school, but I have concerns that need to be considered. First, what are the metrics in which we would switch back to a virtual model? I hope that decision will be based on data looking at new cases per 10,000 or 100,000, hospital capacity, percent positivity rate, etc. Before making the decision to send our kids back, it's imperative to have an outline to guide when in-person instruction is safe and when it is not. Secondly, the timeline should be considered. All projections are that we are heading into the worst 2 months in the pandemic, and numbers are expected to dramatically increase after Thanksgiving. Why are we putting our community at risk for 3 weeks of school? What would be lost by waiting until after the winter break? Lastly, are the teachers' opinions being considered with as much weight as the parents? Learning to teach and developing a curriculum for remote learning has been a tremendous amount of work, to say the least. Asking them to now shift into yet another mode of teaching is asking a lot. In order for our children to have a positive learning experience, teachers need to feel supported, and their physical and mental health needs need to be one of the most important factors in this decision. Thank you for taking the time to read and consider this, Heather Smith. Next is Rebecca Davis. Dear members of the Waunakee Board and the Waunakee School District leaders, thank you for your continued dedication and support of the students and families in your care. We have been impressed with the virtual model of instruction that has been put forth for our children who currently attend the middle school and the high school. Teachers and staff have gone above and beyond to support our children and our family needs. We are so fortunate to have the gold standard of educators and educational administrators working for our children and the community. The school members who have been supporting our children are beyond remarkable, and we are very grateful for their efforts and dedication. As you go forward in making decisions for the remainder of the year, I wish to express concern about the reduction of access to teachers that is likely to occur in order to get back to school during the pandemic. Using my middle school student schedule for a reference, I am asking you to please discuss the following information in open format during your board meetings to offer more transparency to families. Currently, under the virtual model, my middle school student currently has direct access to teachers for the following minutes per week. Homeroom advisor and social studies teacher, 225 minutes. Math teacher, 70 minutes. Comm arts, 70 minutes. Science, 70 minutes. Spanish, 70 minutes. Choir, 70 minutes. PE, 35 minutes. Health, 35 minutes. And interior design, 35 minutes. If you go forth with bringing students back to school under a hybrid model, by approximately how much time will you need to reduce these weekly minutes? It truly does not appear these minutes will be sustainable for any student if the Waunakee School Board works to put forth an in-person hybrid model unless the staff is nearly doubled. By voting to go in-person, the Waunakee School Board will be choosing to reduce each student's access to the current level of teachers and curriculum. Is this acceptable as a high-quality educational delivery model, especially during a pandemic? Do you believe the majority of families clearly understand their children will be getting less, not more, instructional minutes if you vote to go back to in-person hybrid learning? I sincerely believe this is a needed discussion for board members to have in view of the public during board meetings as they consider bringing additional grades back to school. In each student's opportunity for teacher access and instruction, we will need to be reduced in order to allow for in-person learning. Please discuss and explain how you believe this is serving to increase the quality of education for all students under your care at this time. Thank you for your consideration of these concerns. I sincerely appreciate the tremendous amount of information you are contemplating during this time, and I am truly grateful for your time and service to the Waunakee School District, Rebecca Davis. Next is Christina Murphy. Hello, please read in the meeting. Hello, my name is Christina Murphy. I have 2 children in the Waunakee School District. My youngest is in 2nd grade at Prairie, and my oldest is in 5th grade at Intermediate. I am ready tonight to ask that you open up hybrid enrollment for 4K to 4th again, if and when the decision to open up the intermediate school is finalized. When the notice was sent out when opening 3rd and 4th, it allowed there to be a change for 4K and 2nd. Myself and other parents were under the impression that there would be a similar opportunity when there were other reopenings. I had initially picked virtual for my 2nd grader as my child at the intermediate school was going to be home anyway, so it did not make sense to send one in and not the other. My son in 2nd grade is struggling in the virtual environment, which in turn is affecting the mental health and productivity of the rest of the family. Please make the decision to allow parents to change their mind for 4K to 4th with this vote to open up the intermediate school and with each subsequent reopening. Thank you, Christina Murphy. Her address is 203 East Main Street. Amy Friedig. Dear school board members, I am concerned with the Thanksgiving holiday coming up with the high virus activity statewide and the potential novel mixing of people that there may be a local additional spike in COVID-19 cases. I'm equally concerned for what that means for kids and staff in hybrid school. I have 2 in-person kids myself. Please consider the suggestion that in-person kids go virtual for at least a week following the Thanksgiving holiday break. That could potentially allow a significant number of cases to manifest while kids are still at home, thus reducing the exposure for both kids and staff. Protocols are great, but when you are looking at a predictable bad situation potentially approaching, reliance on safety protocol alone isn't enough. The district needs to be nimble and tactical in order to keep the general standards of hybrid in-person afloat, and this may be one way to do so over a potentially disastrous holiday situation. Thank you for your consideration, Amy Friede. And that's the end of the public comments to be read. And that takes us out of the public comments portion of our agenda and takes us to the board reports and action items. So basically, is there any members of the board to report on any activities since our last meeting? You already have all the notes from that one listening session with some of the staff and teachers. So there's no reason to go over that. Other than that, then we will move on to the spring board election, which you'll see in your stuff with the agenda that there's the notice of the spring board election, which affects the 2 seats, one in the town of Westport, city of Middleton and Madison, and the other one, town of Vienna, which will be on the ballot this coming spring. The 2 candidates are Mike Brandt and Mark Hetzel. If you intend to not run, it is asked that you fill out the notification of non-candidacy by December 28th. Is there anything else on that?
No, if you have any questions about what you need to do for running, being on the ballot this year, you can give me a call. There are some guidelines regarding collecting your signatures during the pandemic.
So anyone in the public who's considering running should also contact the school district to get that information for them to be able to fill out their paperwork.
Packets will be available December 1st. That's the first they can be available.
And next is the official results for the November referendum. Do you have that, Randy?
I do. Can I run this from here?
Yep. You want to share the screen?
No, I don't need to for Steve. Where am I going to, Rebecca?
Right, that second tab.
Thank you. Yep, and first of all, thank you to our community for your support of the referendum. And here are the official totals that came out from the canvass. And so you can see the yes votes of 8,491, the no votes of 5,077. So thank you for the canvassers who were part of this, and also for the community members who supported this effort and provided us with some latitude financially as we work through the COVID issues within our school districts. Any questions or comments from board members?
The official canvass is tomorrow, right? I believe they have a canvass.
Our official canvas was done when we did this one.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Randy?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead, Mark.
And Mr. Gutenberg did say this, but I think it's imperative for us as well as a school board just to, again, express our appreciation to the community for the outstanding support. 62.5% voted in favor of the referendum, and this really gives us a resource to help keep ourselves healthy, and in a very difficult time, we're all very appreciative.
Thanks, Mark.
So that takes us then to the 10 COVID-19 related updates and looking at the dashboard.
All right, a few things we just want to, Rebecca, do you have access to the dashboard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, why don't you just, actually, if you want to go to, I'm just looking. one with the tables is probably the easiest one to read. Is that what you would recommend, Kurt?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. And if I can just, Kurt, if you don't mind, if you can walk through a high level of this. I know the board members were able to attend the medical ad hoc committee, but as members of the public, if they weren't part of or didn't join us for that meeting, I'm just going to ask Mr. Ely to kind of walk through kind of the high level pieces of the documents that we have in front of us. We have been collecting our local data with regards to COVID incidents in the district, and we do this on a daily basis, and Kurt does the recording of this. So Kurt, I'll give it to you for just a few minutes.
Sure. So what this first chart really shows is what's happening within our district. We've got it broken down into staff and students. If you want to look at longitudinal information, we do post each week's snapshot on our district website. If you go to our main page, look toward the bottom, there's a COVID link, and then it would be, they're all listed, everything is listed there. As you look at it, you will just see a trend where each week we have more staff and students who test positive, more staff and students who are close contacts. We do have, Mondays seem to be the most common day that people get cleared from either quarantine or isolation. Not quite sure why that is, but it just seems that Monday there tends to be, if you look at it from a week standpoint, Monday is the day when most people receive clearance to resume their activities. The one column that is blank on this is the number of students that are not attending because they have symptoms of an illness, but it's not deemed as COVID related. So you may have a student with a sore throat who then has strep. So that would be a student that would end in that column. This week, unfortunately, because today was a busy day, I was not able to get all 6 of the schools to get their information to me. 4 schools did, 2 schools did not. We will, when I get the other 2 schools, hopefully tomorrow, we will update this chart so that we have that information going into the future. I'll just say in general, we are starting to see more students that are having other illnesses. Again, that's not atypical. We see that this time of year. We see strep throat. We start to see some of those gastrointestinal bugs that are going around. So it's just things that we start to see. To date, we have had to close 6 classes and 1 activity. And that we've been adding about 1 to 2 a week in that area. And that's been pretty recent since we've had to start closing things. The next 3 tables are just some of the snapshot data from our census tracts, starting on September 15th, going up to today. Again, we do also post the full chart that has each track reported as well as graphs. I just noticed in the last, I guess 4 weeks or so, 3-4 weeks, that the data has just really big swings from one day to the next. You may go from 36 positives down to 5 the next day. Where if you look at that chart longitudinally early on, it was less big fluctuations. Now again, I'll just remind people that Alliant Energy Center, about that same time, stopped conducting tests on Sundays and Mondays. So now some of that data gets pushed a little later because there's either a flood of people going on a Tuesday, or people are waiting until later in the week because they do have a capacity limit, I believe, on a daily basis to be tested. So I've just noticed that trend. I'm not sure what it means other than we're just starting to see some bigger fluctuations in our community data. Again, you can see from our perspective, things have gone up. Now they're starting to come down. We'll see if that trend continues the rest of this week. I'm not sure if it will or not. It's very unpredictable. The last table is just our county data. This we pull off the public health website. The third row, we actually have to do a calculation to get that one because it's not just, you can't just extract it from their website. As you can see, the pattern for the county is that things are going up as well. You'll notice over the last 3 weeks, the very bottom, hospitals' ability to treat, they've stopped calculating that. Public health has stopped calculating that because there's a note on their website that they're trying to figure out a new way to calculate that because I don't know that they're thinking they get accurate information because of the increase that they're seeing right now. So I don't know if they're ever going to come up with a new calculation for that or not, but for the last 3 weeks they have not calculated that. That's the data.
Any questions from board members for Kurt with regards to any of the data pieces? And this was an important piece for us to share with medical advisory, and I believe everybody heard the dialogue that took place around all the topics that we presented there.
So basically, when we're looking at the burden rate, which is how many per 100,000 people, Dane County and Waunakee have just about basically tripled since the 1st of October.
Yes.
I mean, we used to be around 20 on a burden rate, now we're at 60. We used to have about, our 14-day average used to be around 17 or so, and now we're sitting at, 45? No, hold it here.
Are you
We're
looking
at
at
16, we used to be at 5.
Yes.
5 or 6, and now we're up to 16, 17.
Correct.
Pretty much on a regular basis the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
The one thing I noticed is on the very first sheet of the district page that you were showing, if you go back up. Okay, if we look here, when I'm looking at the student positive cases, Arboretum, Heritage, and the elementary school aren't showing anything because of the low number.
Correct. If anything that shows as an asterisk, it's because we don't have 5 or more for that cell.
But the 4 grades of the high school are providing over half of all the cases in our entire district.
That's correct.
So the high school, and I'm seeing that, basically across the whole line, the high school is basically a vast majority of what's happening, even though it's only 4 out of 12 grades.
Kurt, do you know precisely how often staff at a high school level are actually reporting whether or not they're hearing about positive cases? Because one of the things that Dave and I don't know if it was Mark or John who was on the listening session on Friday heard was teachers saying that they were hearing from their students that they were positive or someone in their house was positive, and they didn't even know that they needed to relay that to anyone. And Dave and I both just said, email you.
Yep.
Right.
And
So,
they've listened.
okay, so is that
And they've listened.
Is that why the number jumped to 28, or are there still ones trickling in that we don't know about?
Oh, I think there's still cases out there that we do not know about, current as well as historically, that have not been reported to us. But I would say over the last couple of weeks, we've been starting to get more reports from teachers, and I certainly received some after the listening session that you had on Friday. I think I got 2 or 3 emails from teachers. Now, I will say there was only 1 report that we received that we did not know about. But it was 1. It's still 1. So we do want people to report if they hear something. We do want them to report because we don't want to miss anybody, especially as we start thinking about opening up again, because we don't want somebody to not report something that happens the week we bring another group of kids back in and we end up bringing back a student who shouldn't have been here, and then that spreads within our school. So we certainly want to hear about those things as anybody hears about them.
Now, we don't do any contact tracing on kids who are virtual, right? Or do we?
We do because some of our virtual students are participating in some of our activities.
So I was kind of curious because when I'm looking at the numbers, and you're looking at student close contacts, you're seeing a lot of them in the elementary school, considering there's very few kids being reported as positive.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you come down to the high school, you've got 28 kids, but only 58 close contacts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's only 2 to 1, yet we're seeing closer to 10 to 1 in the elementary schools.
So to explain that, if you look at our column that talks about closing classes, we've had to close some classes at our younger grades. So if you close a class, that could give you potentially 12 to 15 students.
Okay, so you're
who
counting
are
all the
close
kids in that
contacts.
closed cabs. Okay. And you were saying before, a couple weeks ago, you brought up that there were parents who you knew, well, the kid would be positive and then you would contact them to do the contact tracing, and they were not giving you any information. They were refusing to provide that, right?
That is true. That is much improved.
It has improved?
It has improved.
What grades was that? Is there specific grades that was happening more in?
It was more at the high school level.
It was more at the high school level, which is we're seeing, I mean, I gotta say, it concerns me greatly to sit there and say our contact tracing, you know, has gotten a lot heftier the last couple of weeks because of what's happening in the community. And then we're basically, if we add the high school, you would basically be doubling the entire caseload work of the school district with just those 4 grades.
Yeah, the one thing I've learned, I guess, with all of this is you can, that's logical to conclude that, but logic hasn't always played itself out in reality with COVID. And some of that is what Dr. Potoff said this evening is we are starting to see more people who haven't had symptoms, but for some reason they went to get tested. For example, they were a close contact within a family, right? So a family member tested positive, but the rest of the family, they're not having symptoms, but because they wanted to see if they did, the family will go to get tested, even though they don't have symptoms, but somebody, or multiple, in that family will have a positive test. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that.
The asymptomatic
The
positives.
asymptomatic people going to get tested because they've been a close contact, and they just want to check it out, so to speak, and then somebody is testing positive. We're starting to see more of that.
I mean, that was literally me in the summer. So when I tested positive at the end of June, we then had my sons and wife tested, and they tested negative twice, but presumably because I tested positive, they would have had to wait the full 14-day period after I was done being symptomatic.
Well, we would ask you a question. We would say, can your children completely isolate from you, or you them? If you say yes, then it's only 14 days. But if we've had some families who can't do that, so then the child is out for the 10 days that the parent is going through their 10-day quarantine, isolation. And then they have to go another 14 days of quarantine. So we have some kids who will be out 24 days. We've had a few of those. What's also happening in that case is the child will go get tested on like day 5 of the original 10. They'll be positive, and then that can actually shorten up their time out of school. But again, a negative test doesn't mean anything. That's another thing that we're finding that people aren't understanding is just because you get a negative test within this 14-day window, it really doesn't do anything for you. You have to do the full 14 days, as you said, Mike. You have to do the 14 days. Now, if you're positive, then we do 10 from the day the sample was taken, which, again, if it generally only helps if the student isn't able to isolate from the source. because then it takes the 14 and probably shortens it up to 15. It gets you about a week.
Any other questions for Kurt?
So Kurt, are the classes that are closed the 6th, is that a 2-week closure on average?
Yes. It's a 14-day on average, but not all, I mean, kind of depends on who it is. If it's a staff member and we have a substitute, then, well, if that's 14, probably. But not necessarily, because we don't identify every student in a room as a close contact. When we shut down a full class, it's generally because we can't be certain that there wasn't a close contact of everybody.
So a class, Joan, could be an afternoon section of arbitrarily 3rd grade, or it could be a special ed class that's a cluster of a teacher and 3 kids.
Right.
We're constituting those as the same.
Correct. Now, those kids all transition into a virtual environment for that 14 days. And if that teacher is able to teach, the teacher teaches, it's just now virtually.
So might a teacher be virtual in the afternoon, but in person in the morning?
Have we had that, Brian?
No, we've not had that yet. No, we've not experienced that yet. So far, in theory, you're right, it could happen, Joan. For example, a teacher is out one day when we have an exposure within a classroom. She or his students could have to be out, but they could be in person. But we haven't experienced that yet.
So would you count 2 classes if you have a morning and afternoon group?
Yes,
Or-
we do count it as 2, because they're distinct sections.
So in the 6th, we could have only 3 teachers.
We could, but we've only done that where we had to do an AM PM once.
Okay, so in the case of an AM hybrid is shut down because of the potential close contact not provable, teacher, kids go home. The PM of that, twin of that, those kids would still come to the classroom, but the teacher would be teaching them virtually from home
Could be
with someone else in the classroom potentially.
supervising.
Right.
Right. Again,
It
a
depends
lot of
on
this depends on timing.
timing and
When do
staffing.
we find out, basically, can I go to Randy and say, do we have time to stop the buses?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. If the buses have, left the barn, the horses
out.
left the barn. If the buses have left the barn, we have to scramble
Yeah.
and provide a supervision in that room so that
Right.
section can run.
Right. Thank you.
Anything else?
Great, thank you, Kurt. Just keep rolling, Dave. You have more of a presentation on this? No, not one, no. So now we'll just start going into the next item.
So the co-curricular?
No, it's the considering of reopening and then the co-curricular.
Yeah.
So the next item is the consideration of the reopening decisions. Just as a bit of a refresher for those who may be watching. Last Monday, the board was in this room. There was a request for us to present a plan for how to bring back our 5 through 12 students by the semester. The presentation, I'm not going to go through that presentation tonight. It is included in board book along with all of the documents that you saw last week. Anyone from the community is welcome to go and review those documents, and you can access those through our website by going to our school board page. There are a couple points I just want to articulate as our staff left that meeting and prepared for decisions that could be made this evening. We felt we needed some preparation work to move some of these plans forward. So in that light, we moved forward, and Mr. Momartz and his staff put forth a registration survey to all of our 5th and 6th grade parents, with them to be able to choose either to stay remote or to move to the in-person hybrid model. We did that before the vote tonight because we wanted to, there are some logistical pieces that are unique to 5-6 that are not true with the K-4 piece. And we felt if any of those played out, as much time as we had, the preparation was needed. So that survey is out there. Right now it is populated by about 530 of our parents. And obviously we have just over 600 kids in the school. So that closes on Wednesday. The other piece with regards to bringing back our 5-6 students, as we looked at busing, which is a factor, we needed to see how can all of the busing routes work with our different grade levels and our instructional models. We would move our 5-6 students to the same start and end time as our K-4. So that was a piece we've discussed and has been communicated out. The next piece that we are preparing for is then to do a similar process with our 7 through 12 families, so that we can get a sense of our 7 through 12 families, how many would like to remain remote, and then how many would want to be in person in the hybrid model. Now, that was built off kind of the timeline we laid forward with regards to this semester. So, but we felt getting that information out early and proof was something that we heard from parents, and from a planning perspective, that was important for us as we started to do the work at the high school and Mr. Borowski and his team to do that. If you tuned in to the medical advisory piece, we spent a significant amount of time discussing sanitization and cleaning of classrooms. And Steve Summers and John Kramer gave a presentation of some of the things that we are looking at, and I felt that they gave us some good feedback with regards to that topic as far as COVID transmission off of surfaces. And I just wanted to articulate that that was a piece that was on our mind and we needed some guidance from our medical advisory group. The final point that I want to make with regards to reopening was when we go back to some of our previous decisions, in midsummer we were looking at our reopening plans and looking at some of the increased costs that were coming along with that. For any students that chose the in-person hybrid model, we did assess and the board approved through our fee process a $50 fee. Now, as Steve and I've talked about that was a piece that we had put forth at a time early in our planning process. And I guess I wanted to bring that to the board to see if that was your feelings on continuing that practice, or given any of the pieces coming post-referendum, if that is something that you would want to go think about in a different direction. So that's all I have for our presentation this evening, because I think we went through it in depth last Monday. But our staff members who put together those plans are present here this evening if there are questions from the board, and I would happily entertain any of those. Mark?
One of the things I'd like to ask Jeff, Tim, and Brian, because we've heard it from some staff, maybe an uncertainty about the schedule, and we've heard it from some parents, concerned that if we switch from the virtual to the hybrid, there are lost instructional minutes in the hybrid compared to the virtual, to what currently exists. So I believe, the letter we heard in open comments addressed 70 minutes for comm arts in the virtual, hypothesizing that there'll be less than the 70 minutes in the hybrid. Could you respond to that concern that there will be fewer minutes per class if we go to the hybrid?
Correct. At intermediate, our remote schedule has about 4 hours of in-person live time with the teacher. When we go AM and PM for 240, after coming and going, we're figuring like 230. So each student, the student that shows up in person would be 2.5 hours of live time with the teacher, and then they'd be doing their asynchronous work while the teacher's with another group of students. So that teacher would not be available for that opposite group. Whereas the group that stays remote will be able to be available to those students all day and roughly hold about, we currently are operating around 4 hours of live time a day.
I mean, to clarify though, I mean, some of that content would move to asynchronous. So right now, those teachers are able to do a live science lesson. In the hybrid model, they would have to switch that to be an asynchronous science lesson.
Is there any consideration for separating the virtual from the hybrid so that they're totally different? Or are we looking at putting the virtual in with cameras? Is that what we're talking about?
For 5-6, they would be separate, but 7-12 would be the cameras in the room.
Because we don't have enough teachers for sections and things like that.
Correct. I think just the differences in model, Judy, as you go from elementary up into secondary. And I know that Brian and we agree, feel like maintaining the course selections, the electives, et cetera, are important at the high school. So that was part of the reason we looked at that model.
What about middle school?
Like it pertains to the minutes, you mean?
No,
The minute things, the minute
hybrid
allocation.
and virtual, are we keeping the virtual students separate from the hybrid in
For
middle
very
school?
similar reasons as the high school, where it's the encore classes and elective classes, really because you're trying to pull them out, and you don't have the ability with the number of periods in the day to have all of those people meet and not rearrange the entire schedule potentially and pull people out. And even then, you'd struggle to create an equitable teaching world for those people who are trying to do both things at the same time.
Okay.
In the core classes, you could probably maybe navigate that more easily, but to maintain across the board scheduling where students have the ability to not only engage in core classes, but also the encore classes, it just doesn't make the same sense as it would in the 5-6 level or even the K-4 level.
So what about the minutes per class?
The minutes per class, because we're looking at doing the cameras in the classroom, there isn't I think the perceived loss of time. The amount of time that you would be spending with a teacher would still be the same, because in the proposed model, we're still going to be in class for about 35 to 40 minutes per period, like we are right now, but just half of the kids are going to be in person, the other half are going to be coming in virtually, and then you're going to flip-flop, whether you do it on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday model or an alternate week model, you're still going to have all the kids in the class at the same time, so it shouldn't be the perceived loss of minutes. I think that's just a misunderstanding because they don't understand that the kids who are not in person are still going to be attending class.
Will the students that are not in person have opportunities to communicate with the teacher, ask questions, raise a hand electronically, or?
I think that's the goal. How that actually works when we get into practice, we're probably not going to really know how well that works until we actually start doing it. I think the trick in navigating a chunk of kids who are in one model and another chunk of kids who are in a different model at the same time, we haven't really done that before. And so to find out how well that works and how we're able to navigate that, I'm sure there's lots of people who are concerned about that and questions about whether we can do it or not. I would envision it being very similar to when we started the school year in September. We're going to find some things that we're going to need to navigate and figure out how to do it, and after a while we'll find our way to make it work best. It won't be optimal, but I think we'll have some level of engagement, but it won't be as strong as it is right now when you have all the kids virtual and you can have them all doing the same thing at the same time.
I'm doing that right now with a student in my class at Whitewater, and it is difficult to teach and have two people on a screen behind you and try to focus on both. It is extremely difficult to run a class that way. So.
Brian, the high school with the minutes?
Minutes, actually we're adding a few minutes. So the only classes will be 50 minutes long as opposed to 45. The one thing we are pulling out though is the contact time during the school day. It's going later after the kids have left. So that's built into the morning hours. It's flipping to the afternoon to eliminate a transition during the day, a mixed group of kids tracking through a separate system than Infinite Campus, We would use scheduling for that. It's just, it's too complicated to do that. I mean, we could do it, it'd just be a nightmare for Kurt. I feel bad for him. And so the minutes they're the same or a little more. It's just it's a different model, different times of the day. But with the cameras, it'll be a challenge. It's something we're working on. We set it up last week. We've taken a look at that. From what we hear, there's challenges with that. There's other models out there where you double up the schedule and you run it twice. That's something I've thought about too. But that then you're pulling away all contact time and all supports. I mean, so once you start really manipulating the models, you run the risk of not being able to support kids at other times. So it's one of the reasons we went with this, and it's pretty much seamless. If we have to transition in and out, we can go back to the current model that we have if we have to go into the virtual model. So it'll be different because kids are pretty much going to be on Zoom that are not in the building from 9 a.m. till 12:30, pretty much straight with 5-minute breaks in between classes. So it'll be a shift. Right now we have breaks set up. We have times for students to step out 15 minutes between classes to regroup for the next one. It's just going to be pretty much bang, bang, bang because we have a group of kids we're trying to transition through this schedule, fit them into that time of the day, and eliminate transitions and opportunities for contacts on the COVID end. So.
Yeah, I can vouch for 2 high school kids who are doing that. That 15 minutes between classes is beneficial for them to get out, get up, move around, get something to eat, drink, whatever, get back, get set again. 5 minutes is not going to be that rewarding for that, and will make a difficult day. So.
In terms of transparency or clarity for parents, this is the 5-6 issue, I think now the 7-12. There's a given that there are going to be more transitions for the students because of uncertainty of how staff will meet the needs. So there are going to have to be teacher changes for some of our students at least. Is that correct, Kim?
It seems to be inevitable that there will be some changes in their homeroom teacher. That we don't want there to be.
Right.
We're trying to figure out a way to make it work, and we haven't been able to figure out how to meet all the needs without having some changes happen in order to run 2 models in the building at one time.
Thank you.
One other question that was brought up was the idea of kids who are currently in virtual who want to go to in-person. I believe we were saying we were allowing that at the quarters.
Quarters. So I think the question, part of like the public comment you read earlier, Dave, I think that was a request from like a 3rd or 4th grader, or when we just shifted here a few weeks ago, wanting to then make a shift again when we went with the 5th and 6th grade, if we did that at the end of November. What we had set up when we made that shift here just with the 3rd and 4th graders coming in is that we would do that at the quarter, and that's that 3rd week in January. And that's just the logistical pieces of trying to navigate, really, as Judy, you were pointing out, the in-person and the virtual teachers, and needing to make sure that we have those class sizes balanced and we have the requisite number of kids in person within a cohort that allows us to be able to accommodate that. Movement in and out is not seamless. The model that Brian and Jeff are talking about has much more pieces where if somebody was that's just a whole different model. It's not the same.
Do you have a question, Jim?
I guess I would like to just, as a board, consider if it's a good time to bring 5 and 6 back. You know, we have such high rates in our community. We're talking about bringing them back the day or right after the holiday. We have loss of time with the kids. You know, it makes me extremely uncomfortable, and I don't know how much responsibility we should be taking for the community for the health of the community and keeping it closed longer.
Just to be clear, there is no current motion that has been passed as to when to bring 5th and 6th back.
I know,
All
and
there
that's why I'm
is was a
bringing that up.
plan with an idea. For there to be an actual change or any sort of movement, there's going to have to be a motion at some point. Brian?
I just have a question. Should we separate returning of 5 and 6 and K through 12? Does it make more sense to do that when that time comes? Or can we actually put it all? Could we start a second semester 5 through 12 if it's safe to do so? Then, or do we want to split it up because of logistics and transportation?
And I think the logistical piece, transportation-wise, is things that we can navigate. It's really, I think, the splitting of things up was really built off the concept of trying to gradually reopen, particularly as you're kind of looking at our data and seeing how does that progress as we move forward. But I think as far as the logistics, and I'll ask if there's anybody from, I know that Tim and Amy, you've worked the closest with some of these logistics, but it's I don't think there's a logistical piece that says you couldn't do 5-12 together. It's more of the piece COVID related, which is why we broke it up.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that, and you've heard this before, and Brian's spoken to it, is one of the operational pieces that's an important part of what we're thinking about, and obviously the safety of staff and students and the communities first, is sub-availability. And if we all of a sudden added 8 more grades in, all of a sudden, we might end up finding ourselves in the deep end all of a sudden on subs. We might not, it might be fine, and that could have a ripple effect across all of our schools and kind of run the risk of dragging everything down. So at least to me, I think taking one bite of the apple and coming back just to make sure we know where we are on subs, I think is a benefit.
I think, just to your question though, Brian, I agree with Tim as far as the sub piece is an unknown for us moving forward. But as far as the logistics of transportation and all those things, those can be planned together.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was looking for.
We've been talking about this obviously all fall and trying to project how we can do this safely, and we're looking at we can provide a tremendous education with the staff we have virtually. But after sitting and listening to the medical advisory group today and realizing how significant the increase is and how significant the pressure is, it's like, why are we going to add to that when our job is to provide an education and we can do that virtually? And I don't know how long that will last, but with the idea that there could be a medication on the cusp of this coming in, that's a semester or later, I just think we're jumping the gun to add more COVID to the community by going back early, when we can provide, and we've been providing a great virtual, and we're improving on that, talking to everybody. I guess I just want to reconsider our push to go back.
Mark?
A number of points. One, I think it's really clear, no matter what model we're going to be talking about, whether it's the present virtual or the potential hybrid, there are going to be pains associated with whichever one we transition to, if and when we transition. And I think that's important for people to understand, and we can only do the best we can with what we have. The one solution to all of that would be to roll back the clock to November 2019, but we can't do that. And so no matter what we do, we're really going to need people in our community to try to understand that there isn't a perfect educational system that any school district in the state of Wisconsin is providing their kids. Everyone is trying to do the best they can. Secondly, our staff, from administration to instructional to support staff, have worked so far overtime, above and beyond, and we really need to appreciate what they're doing, and the shortcomings of whatever we have is not their fault. If we want to criticize the school board, lay it on us, but our staff is doing everything they can to meet the needs of our students in whatever format we as a board ask them to do. They will give their best because they're gold star teachers and gold star administrators. Finally, in terms of the movement, I've been struggling for 3 weeks with this thing. In terms of what are we doing in 5 and 6, and then 7 through 12. The one thing that gave me some peace of mind was the agreement that we were months ago that we're going to balance the metrics with the operational capacity. And as a board member, I feel we have some resources that we can provide the operational piece. What we can't control is the metrics. And Dave, you pointed out earlier this evening, since we agreed to go bring back the 3-4 the last week of September, our numbers have tripled or quadrupled in all the categories. It's so counterintuitive to the reality, to the science, to bring kids back at this holiday time. You look at the universities, they're sending their kids home at this time because of the threat of the winter respiratory issues that their students are facing, and they're going to be doing their semesters online, their semester exams at home, and then maybe return sometime in the second semester. So I don't want to abandon that balance that makes sense. As painful as it is to our families that want kids there now, I totally understand it. I totally get it. And I totally get the disappointment they're going to have if we decide not to do that. But I can't throw out what I see on paper and what I see happening in the hospitals and when I see our numbers. So I, for one, would like to see us wait till the second semester to bring kids back when there's a threshold. If that threshold drops, if the threshold is what it is today, I don't see how we can do it. So whatever date we pick, my heart tells me it's in pencil, not in ink. It has to balance what's the reality of the disease in the Waunakee area, and do we have the operational capacity to deal with it?
Agreed, definitely.
So what's your motion?
Well,
So I'll put a motion out. I will put the motion out that we not postpone, but that we target the start of the second semester for grades 5, 6, and 7, 12, provided that the metrics improve from what they are today. And, if we want to set to what they were on 9/29, we can make that part of the motion. I did not plan on doing that. But I really think, given the holidays coming up, the numbers we have now, it is so irresponsible for us to go forward with what we all want to do, get our kids back in school as soon as possible. So my motion is 5, 6, 7, 12, if numbers allow us, start the second semester.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well said, Mark.
Thank you.
I gotta say, the biggest reason for putting that medical committee together was because we're extremely fortunate in Waunakee to have a couple of the top people living in our community with kids in our schools. And the fact they all volunteered their time, the nurse practitioners and the doctors, to come in here and, Bill Random running the clinic right in town, who can tell us exactly what's happening every day. And they all said the same thing. And I hope we'll be able to I hope a lot of the public saw it, and we'll have to help the rest of the public see it. But when you have numbers of 5 to 7 back at the end of September in a month and a week, you triple those numbers. And when you look at what's happening in the high school, the concept of bringing the high school in right now and basically tripling the COVID cases within our district and trying to contact trace that, we have 6 classes shut down on schools that aren't even showing 2 cases. How many classes would be shut down in the high school when you have 28 active students who have COVID? How many classes would barely be able to be open? We'd be going, those poor kids would be going in and out of school every week, or 2 weeks, actually. I mean, I don't think you'd be able to keep even half the classrooms open at that rate. And that's 4 grades, yet they're showing over half of the everything we have in the entire district. If we bring them in, we risk losing K through 4 because we'd be so overwhelmed we'd have to shut the whole district down, like we've seen other school districts do around us. So I totally agree with you, and let's hope the community decides that they're going to go back to the numbers we used to have in September, and then we can open them up.
And we have to remember, we have a wonderful virtual program going. And we have teachers who are knocking that out of the ballpark.
And I would hope, if that's what we choose to do tonight, that more teachers, 7-12, will be looking at the option for the enhanced virtual.
Yeah.
We were hearing from kids and families alike how beneficial that is to be coming in the system. That's something we have a handle on, that I don't see why we can't continue to try to work within that model. In addition to that, I would still encourage our administration to go forward with the registration in preparation for semester 2.
I understand that we did find out during the listening session with the teachers, one of them was a special ed teacher in the high school, and that teacher had about a dozen students. 5 of them are quarantined right now. And they were doing enhanced with them, bringing them in, and here in high school, lost half her students. They can't come in anymore. That's the problem with having too high a community rate, is you will lose those classes. So, are there any further comments? Otherwise, there is a motion on the floor to have 5 through 12 at the beginning of the 2nd semester if the metrics go down. So we will have to do that as a voice vote. Did you have a comment?
No, it's probably not germane to this thing, right? I don't know if it was John or Mark who brought it up in terms of, or maybe you losing other grades.
Yeah.
The whole idea of, it's not lost on me that other districts that do have kids in person are also deciding to take a pause for a period of time after they think that families are going to be going out and getting more involved. So it's not germane to Mark's motion, but one of the things I did want to bring up, and I brought it up with Randy last week so he knew about it in advance because he knew I'd ask, was do we take any kind of pause on the kids that are in person now for a short period of time during a period when we know there's going to be a lot more people traveling around? So not germane to Mark's motion, but I want to bring it up at some point.
Well, let's vote on the motion on the floor, and if we want to discuss that, we can. So the motion on the floor is still up, unless there's comments on that motion. We are doing things by roll call due to the masks and the public wanting to know the vote. So first, Brent.
So, I'm sorry, the motion that Mark made.
The motion Mark made, which is 2nd semester based on metrics.
Aye.
Engbertson?
Aye.
Ensign?
Aye.
Heineman's not present. Petzold?
Aye.
Hafer?
Aye.
And Betcher, aye. So 6-0. And do you want to, since this is a kind of an opening question, I guess we should deal with this now. Did you want to at least, well, we should at least ask Randy about the concept of, do we take a pause over Thanksgiving and or Christmas break?
I guess,
And what would that effect be?
And the reason I had brought that up is because it was before the medical committee said what they said. This was last week when we were talking about it. If we're looking at dates, the original date we had talked about bringing 5-6 back, for example, was 30th. And I guess in my mind and to the mind of other people who made the comment to me was, why would, if you're bringing these kids back in, why are you bringing them back in right after Thanksgiving? And the idea being, well, what if you took a pause for a week or 2, kick that out a little ways so that if there is some viral increase in the student body, you could let that die down or pass while kids are virtual for basically another 10 days. And if you started, for example, kids back in person, I had thought this idea up when we were thinking if we were going to be bringing 5, 6 back on the 30th, why not just kick everybody out to the 10th? Because it's after an asynchronous day when no one's there. It literally buys you a week from 2 weeks from Thanksgiving for there to be, if there's higher levels of exposure in the student body, you then don't have them all on board. So that was the idea. I'm not saying it's a good idea, but I wanted Randy at least to vet that out or have some thoughts about it.
I think there's a couple thoughts. I think the one piece you talked about is if you're going to take a pause based on disease mitigation, it needs to be that 14-day period. Because that's really, because you'd have to go back to that last day of that Sunday and build from there. I think we had, and I realize we've had some of our numbers escalating over the last few weeks, but we just had fall break here not too many weeks ago. Just a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
Followed by Halloween.
Followed by Halloween, and from a contact tracing piece, we've been able to manage that. From a piece then of looking at if you do it for Thanksgiving, are we doing the same thing after the winter break? And then I just look at the disruption of being in person, then going virtual, then being in person for a few days, going on break, going back virtual. I see that just, to me, that seems very choppy from an instructional standpoint. I also look at just from our K-2 teachers' perspective, is they started the year in their hybrid. It's not that they're not capable of making a quick switch because we have all of those pieces in place, but it is a shift. And to do that for 2 weeks to kind of make those shifts, certainly are things we can make work, but again, that's another complicating factor we add to it. So I guess from my perspective, I don't know what COVID's going to do, but I know that we've been able to manage this through some other times, such as Halloween and that fall break, and we've been able to do that successfully. And I think if we're able to do that, I think that's a better model than being in and out multiple times.
Mark?
I'm happy to hear you say that. I would hope we could maintain the consistency of what we're currently doing versus break, come back. And I really don't look forward to saying, well, shut everything down because something might happen. I do think we have to beg our community to rethink how as families we're going to be celebrating our holidays. We personally made a decision, we're not visiting our daughter. It'll be my wife, myself, and our grandson. We want to go visit, but we're not going to. We're not afraid of this disease, but we're being reasonable about trying not to get others infected by it. And that's what we need our community to be able to buy in. To assume that everyone's going to do what they want feeds into, I think, what's wrong right now, that some people are just doing what they want because they want to live, which is good. You know, that's, I don't blame them. They want to live their lives, but we can't be oblivious to the reality. So I would hope as long as our system can maintain it, and then I trust Randy and your team to say, look, we need to take a pause because it's overwhelmed us. And then that may dictate, if we do have to shut down, then we may say, okay, let's wait till semester. But I would rather wait till we see we can't handle it than do it in case we might not be able to.
Yeah, and I agree with Mark, but I think it was a very creative idea and that I didn't think about either.
Yep, no, I agree.
So thanks, Mike, for bringing that up.
So I'm not seeing a strong desire on someone to make a motion to suspend. Okay. So that should take care of that one. Now we go on to co-curriculars.
And the next item is the review of co-curriculars. And in the packet, what I have reviewed for you are some of the high-level conversations that we started last week again. Aaron was present last week and walked through the low, medium, and high-risk activities. Rebecca, I'm looking at the, where did it go? I think it's
Yeah.
I think that's it,
Yeah.
yes, thank you. Yeah, this is just a PowerPoint that Aaron put together as we were meeting and going through a few things. So I think it's relatively short. Most of it's kind of review. So I'm just going to ask Aaron if you can just kind of walk through the highlights, because I think the board has seen most of this. But this really is kind of keying up into the conversation with regards to what are the options we have for winter co-curriculars. In your packet, you see this presentation. You also see a document that Aaron was working on that provided some kind of local guidance that he was kind of proposing if we were going to move in this direction. And then the WIAA guidelines that they've provided to all schools, of which most of them in the WIAA is operating under. So, Rebecca, if you can just be the scroller for us here tonight, that would be great. So, do you want to just talk through these things real quickly, Aaron, please?
So, yeah, so the couple options for winter athletics, you know, we have you can have the traditional winter season with no home events. There's also been a proposal for what's been known as what's been referred to as the DCAA. That's basically the Dane County Athletic Association. That would be a bubble just here in Dane County. Randy had a meeting with the superintendents on Friday. I believe that was one of the topics of discussion. I don't know how much detail they went in there. That plan would need approval from public health. In the athletic directors meeting last Monday with public health, the earliest that they seem to be moving on that wouldn't be until January. Then the option that's not stated up there, of course, would be to hold off on winter sports.
Right. So just to kind of go back to those three things, one is looking at the Dane County piece, which is not yet approved by Dane County Public Health. One is to run our season as normal, but there's no home events, there's just away events. And the third option is, well, there's really kind of two other ones, is one, you're kind of running a continuation of like your contact days and your practices, and the fourth one is you just don't operate it at all. And I think it's important to kind of see what those different activities are and what their levels of risk are. So you can keep going, Rebecca.
So our winter offerings are up there: boys and girls basketball, gymnastics. We co-op with the Forest. Boys hockey, girls hockey. We co-op with Sun Prairie. Sun Prairie is the lead school. At this point, Sun Prairie is. We had a meeting this afternoon. The earliest they plan on winter sports at this point in time would not be until second semester. We also offer boys swimming and wrestling. Those are our WIA sports. As Petra, who was here during comments, mentioned, we do have dance team, which is under what's called the WACPC, and then ski and snowboard, which is governed by an organization called Wyshera. So they all have organizing bodies there. Some of our Badger Conference schools. Now, remember, we have 16 schools spread out over 9 counties. So we have schools that have some very different operating rules and regulations from their public health. So other schools pursuing winter sports or some type of winter sports include Baraboo, Beaver Dam, Portage, Reedsburg, Sauk Prairie, Fort, and Watertown. Yes, Mark?
Aaron, with regard to this group,
Yes.
they have to comply though to the WIA COVID guidelines, correct?
So the groups that are going are going to have to comply with whatever the WIA regulations that document, I believe, was shared in your board
So
book.
is that no visitors, no spectators in the gym? Yeah, I know there were a couple with the face mask and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so they limited spectators. Basically, every sporting event has limited spectators. If you went to, say, like a Baraboo or a Beaver Dam game, more often than not, you're limited. Each player is allowed to bring 2 guests into the event, and so those type of things. So everywhere we're at, there's limited spectators, or at least everywhere that has had events has had limited spectators. So yeah, that has happened at those events. Like it says up there, Monroe is planning to start winter sports on December 28th, start practicing at that time. That was based on a recommendation from their county's public health. Edgewood is planning on no home events and running all aways. The 2B determines there are Mount Horeb, Milton, Monona Grove, Oregon, and Stoughton. I had received a text from DeForest, which is the one school you don't see up there. Right now they're looking at potentially, literally came in at about 6 o'clock today, 6 p.m. tonight, is they're contemplating not pushing the start of their seasons off to later in the winter season. So that's new information that I just received this evening. So.
Can you just repeat that, Aaron? They are looking to move them out?
So what he said is they're now considering a January start date for their winter sports. Delay. I think we will need to delay any possibilities of competing until at least January. Is the text he sent me this evening.
Very good. Thank you.
So, if we are offering sports, we're going to be falling under basically a couple different sets of safety protocols. First is the WIA guidelines. They've set out safety protocols for all sports for you to follow in regards to competitions, but also we would have to follow whatever that particular county's public health regulations have set up. The county regulations would trump public health if they're more restrictive. We would be going by the county regulations. And then the culminating events or state tournaments have not been fully finalized. If you've closely you're following what's going on. Some sports have had traditional state tournaments. Other sports, football, for example, this fall is having sort of 14, I'll call them regional events. The state basketball tournament and the state wrestling tournament, state hockey tournament, at this point, the talk is that each division would be at a separate location in the March timeframe, sort of when our traditional winter sports state tournaments are. But those details have not been fully formalized or finalized by the WIA or their board of control. So along sort of safety protocols continued there. Waunakee would follow the Waunakee Athletics Plan. That's the one I believe it was included in your board packet. That's the start of the plan. Public Health, Madison-Dane County really informs that plan. And then of course we would have to follow the WIA sport regulations. We would also need to rely heavily on parents to be monitoring and screening their children for symptoms, making sure if they are, that they're not still sending them to practices or to competitions. And then finally, our coaches, we would rely heavily on them to encourage their kids to stay, calling it their bubble, which is basically the teammates and families only, minimizing travel to other places as much as we can. And finally, I just went over some pros and cons with Randy of offering our winter sports. I think we've heard this several times. You've heard it from kids. You've heard it from Petra today, one of the students that was here. The mental health and wellness, being able to be in sports and activities. If we're running sports, I believe it was Coach McKenzie who mentioned this, that we're able to kind of control our athletes in school setting, giving them structured interaction in a consistent group and being able to enforce those rules. I think it'll improve our ability to contact trace when we do have COVID positives or close contacts. Provide motivation for students to keep up with their academics, and Coach Natsky touched on that. We won't have to worry about overlapping sports. Coaches, parents, athletes definitely have a desire to play. Some of the cons, though, we are going to have increased risk of COVID-19 related incidents. Our competition pool is going to be somewhat smaller. We won't have necessarily the same traditional opponents that we have had in previous years. In most cases, or in many cases, fans will not be allowed, or fans won't be able to attend in the same way they have in previous years. They'll have to watch streaming and things like that. One of the considerations too is with the rules here in Dane County, when we do practice, what are those practices gonna look like? And then finally, you know, I have talked to some kids, and there's a lot of kids that really wanna be able to participate. There are some, you know, that have some reservations. Again, if it's such a change from previous years, are they still gonna wanna participate? And that's a consideration that we need to take under advisement when we make these decisions.
Aaron, what's the WIA, I forget the time, for shortened time frame for winter sports?
So yeah, so they've shortened up all sports. Instead of the normal about 12-week season, most sports now are 8 to 9 weeks. That's varies slightly here and there with each sport, but approximately 8 to 9 week seasons.
You better reschedule. You have to remake a schedule?
So,
and
yes.
When would the first game anticipated be?
So each sport is slightly different, but a basic generalization is you need to have a week's worth of practice before you can have your first competition. Now some sports, there's a longer required practice time before you can compete, such as gymnastics and hockey. But for whatever day we start practice, you know, you have to have at least 5 to 7 practices, depending on which sport it is. Yes, we'd have to remake schedules. I've already reached out to some athletic directors just to see what options are out there for us. But yeah, we would be rebuilding schedules.
And how many scrimmages would be requested?
So, we can, I mean, logistically or legitimately, with current WIA bylaws and regulations, we're allowed to have basically almost across the board unlimited scrimmages. There are some, like I said, sport-specific regulations to that, but in general, you're fairly, what's the word, fairly open in terms of the number of scrimmages you could have.
What happens if a student tests positive and you got close contact? Is your team then quarantined?
So if we had a positive student athlete, that student athlete would be quarantined, and then that's when we work with Kurt and Brian to do, and we do the contact tracing and potentially quarantine the students that are close contact. If it's a significant portion of the team, it's definitely something where we have to consider shutting that team down. If it's a coach, it's, you know, we may have to have the coach step away, and that's, you know, an assistant might have to step in that spot. And fill
So
in.
when you said cons, and one of the cons was if it becomes too many, we have to stop.
Well, yeah, if we get to a point where, you know, if we have X amount of, I don't want to pick out a sport, but if we have X amount of players on a sport that are either a positive test or a close contact, we may have to cancel a freshman game. We may have to, you know, it's not uncommon to look on there now, currently right now, with the sports that are going on, to see that games have been canceled because of quarantine situations.
The process of the decision making is no different than it is for a classroom. When it comes to activities, it's the same process. If we identify whoever as a close contact, then those students or coaches are out for 14 days. If that activity can continue to run, just depends on what's left, really. Maybe we may have to shut down a whole group, or we may only have to take out one person. It just depends on when we, and that's based on our experience from the fall.
Okay. Thank you.
So Aaron, given our earlier decision, is it viable to allow our sports teams to practice as of the start of their season through the end of the first semester, and then go forward with some kind of a second semester schedule through the end of their season.
Wouldn't that kind of be hoping for that Dane County thing to get going?
I would say beyond that, I'd say anyone in our conference. I mean, if we want to go to Sauk, if we want to go to Monroe, they're starting on December 28th, whenever that is. It's certainly, they're already going to have lost half their season. I'm just asking if it's viable to set up that kind of a schedule. I'm just being responsive to what we've heard from our kids, even Heather about her experiences with cross-country beforehand. Our kids are going to be educated every day virtually, but they do need some contact, and that's why I like the idea of if we can't give games in the first semester, at least give practices, and then have a second semester schedule, recognize it's modified, but our cross-country team had a 40% season, but their kids got to experience some of the joys and dreams that they've been waiting forever for. Is it viable?
That's a similar, I mean, you're kind of building up, I think what I heard you say, Aaron, is Sun Prairie was looking at potentially something like that when you were talking about hockey. I think one of the challenges, and that's probably hard for Aaron to answer, is the ability to find games. And as you start to look at when you get these seasons that get truncated down of when you actually get into the tournament series too, in preparation, because you also have that fall to spring season coming and then the spring season. So you've got a lot of things getting kind of compacted there, and the winter pushes right up against it.
I guess one of the questions that I'm not able to answer when you ask if it's viable is, what impact would that have on some of our kids on whether they would come out for our teams or not? Would they wait until January? And that, I don't know that I can necessarily answer that question.
I don't know if anyone can, but if we shut it down totally, our elite athletes will find an outlet. But a lot of less elite athletes who benefit from these experiences may not have the same opportunity to go to the clubs, to go to the AEUs, to find a rec program that will take them in. And at least this gives us a controlled environment. It deals with all the mental health, physical health, connectedness that we can't give them through the virtual experiences, but we could in a controlled environment. So if our kids would, if it's half the kids want to do it, I think it would be worth doing. Just like we don't have 100% of our kids in that, in the sports training classes. We have a lot of kids, but not everyone. This gives just one more opportunity for those who really have a passion for that activity in a controlled environment until we are looking at opening up again.
So that was my question, was when does the end of our sports seasons before spring starts? And when is these AAU and everything else kick off their season? Which I know if they don't play, they could kick it off right now, but where's that transition, and are we going to have the top 5, 6, 7, 10 players on women's and men's teams that aren't just going to get up and leave to join a traveling team, AAU team, if they're only getting 6, 7 games? And I know you can't answer that, but that's what we have to sort of think about is, and if they do leave, are we going to be able to have the motivation to coach the next 8, the next 10, or when the top 15 are gone or something like that? I'm just trying to figure out the timeline in my head when the kids are going to still go play AAU after the season's over. And come back to Dane County. I mean, that's a given. So what can we provide if we want to provide something? And how does that, how you see it work? I know
So if you're looking, and generally speaking, our tournament series for sports starts mid to late February. So if you're looking at a January start time, whether that's the semester or after the winter break or something like that, you're probably looking at, a 5 to 6 week quote unquote regular season, and then the playoffs, which would be another couple weeks in there. So you would, roughly, you're cutting off anywhere from a month to 6 weeks of the season by waiting until January, in terms of the competitive part of the season. Now, if we're gonna go, I don't know, and I've coached, and we have some other people around the table here that have coached. If you were to tell me I was gonna practice every day starting March 16th, but I'm not gonna compete until January 5th or whatever the date is, November 16th until January, there's no way you can just keep practicing that long without burning your kids out. Right. So I think there would probably be some type of reduced practices during that time. But whether or not kids go to AAU, I don't know how. If we're not running a regular season, I think that would happen with some of our better kids and some of the sports that have stronger AAU programs. Not every sport has a strong AAU program as some of the winter sports. But I think that would definitely happen with some of our kids.
So there's not a deadline that the regular season games need to be done?
For us.
Yeah, for that 6 weeks.
So yes, there is, but it's different for each sport depending on when their playoff season runs at.
Okay.
But generally speaking, you're looking at mid-February for that last sort of regular season game. Okay. The exact date fluctuates a little bit for each sport, but that's typically what you're looking at, is about mid-February.
The medical committee advised no sports. They said that the problem is here. The high school, we see the numbers are the worst, and doing the high-risk sports is just asking to make the problem worse. This fall, we did the low-risk sports only and let the other ones practice to some degree. That's the way I feel we should be on these sports right now. If some of these kids go off to AU, they're hurting the community. They're showing that they're not going to follow the safety protocols because they decided they're going to leave and not follow the safety protocols. So sitting here saying that we somehow expect them to follow the safety protocols they've already said they're not going to, in order to play the sport the way they want to play the sport. We're seeing it in the high school kids now. If we want to open this district, if we want to keep it open, we have to do what we need to do medically to make it happen. Risking K4, risking the whole rest of the district because of sports doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be about education. I want a Dane County bubble league. That would be great. That's exactly what we should be doing. And hopefully they'll get it going by January. And I know I'm personally going to work with some people I know at the county to try and say, look, the situation's going to get worse if kids leave the county on AU and then come back into the county. We're just making the spread worse. Let's make this happen. But us sitting here saying that we're going to run some half league and let them leave and go everywhere when, your slide said follow PHMDC, and right away the first thing we do is say leave the county so that you don't have to follow PHMDC. Because PHMDC says no basketball, basically. And what are we going to do to get our numbers down so we can open the high school? But letting the kids go and setting up a league where they're just going to go and play and violate that rule and make the spread worse says we're not going to open the high school.
You fine with doing low-level sports?
I'm-
assuming the low-risk sports?
I'm absolutely fine with doing low-risk sport, because that's what the medical advice is.
Okay, I'm gonna make the motion, it's the first point to consider on the agenda, can low-risk sports practice and compete home and away? I'll make a motion that they can practice and compete home and away.
Second.
I didn't hear the second,
Yeah,
that you
didn't
can
hear.
practice,
That
yeah.
low risk can practice and travel at the low risk sports.
Inside and outside Dane County?
Yes.
Yes.
Because that's snowboard and skis, gotta go outside
Yeah.
Dane County.
You're at low risk inside or outside Dane County, that's
It
what
can be really slow
the
going
advice
down the
is.
hill by the way.
So just to reiterate, low-risk sports are ski, snowboard, boys swimming, and gymnastics.
Yes.
Is that correct, Eric?
Yes.
So, motion by Mike, second by me. Any discussion on that motion? Well, we should do it by voice. Mike,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Joan,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and myself, aye. I'd like to make the motion on the medium and hybrid sports that they be allowed to practice according to PHMDC rules at this time. And if the numbers go down to September numbers, or Dane County opens a league, then we consider opening them to full competition.
Before someone seconds that. So if your motion, if the numbers go down and there isn't a Dane County league, Aaron would still have the authority to schedule games for those teams outside of Dane County.
Yes,
Just like
because
we
that's
are
what we allow the
Just
fall
like we are
teams
the
to
low
do.
income. Then I would like to, well, we need a second on that.
Second.
A second?
Then I would amend that we set a tentative date to first competition occurring no later than January 11th, which is before the second semester begins, but it's 2 weeks after the Christmas break. And it would allow some of the competition, if our numbers go down, to occur sooner than waiting until the end of the month. So that's my amendment.
Okay, so there's an amendment, and I'll second the amendment. I need to ask one question, sir. WIAA rules. If someone was practicing on our team, and then they went out and decided to play with EA, or
Whatever
whatever,
it's called, yeah.
any of these club teams, whoever they are, EA, Electronic Arts teams. There is E-leagues, so
There are.
I don't know what season they're in. But if someone went out and did that, would they be ineligible to be on our team?
So you can practice with a club team. You can go and practice with a private wrestling club. You are limited in season by WIA rules and regulations to two club competitions during season. So as an example, if you're on the wrestling team, per WIA regulations, you can compete in two non-high school sanctioned events during the high school wrestling season. That is WIAA regulations. And that's something we have not denied any of our athletes previously. We did allow a golfer to do that this fall because it's in our code that we do allow it with coach and AD approval. And so we have allowed that, and WIA regulations allow for it.
I would like to make an amendment then, that any player who practices or plays on a club team is ineligible for our teams. And there's a second. The reason I'm saying that is this isn't golf, which was low risk. These are high risk sports. If they go off out of county and play with someone else at high risk, they're risking our whole team.
You're basically trying to create a bubble.
I'm trying to create a bubble.
Practice or compete.
Practice or compete with any other team,
It's
they
a
are
bubble.
ineligible for our teams.
And there's some sense in that. You're really limiting then exposure beyond.
I really hope to create this Dane County Bubble League and that we can run that. But we can't do that if some of our players are playing outside the bubble. That's the absolute violation of it. So, okay, so that's an amendment. Under our, you can only have 2 amendments under Robert's Rules of Order. We have to vote on each amendment separately and then vote on whatever the final motion is. So first, we would be voting only on the amendment that I stated that any player playing with a club or other team is ineligible for our team.
I don't have an amendment, I have just a question. I think Aaron's got something to say. Do we, are we just coming into voting?
We're just voting on that one amendment first, so I'm just making it clear what the next vote is.
If Aaron needs to say something before we vote.
Yeah.
Well, I just have a question.
Sure.
One, is that only going to pertain to our medium and high risk athletes? 2, when we say club, I guess I would need some more definition to what your intent is, because we have not just within Dane County, but would that apply then to dance team members also doing dance rehearsals at the local studios? We have swim team members that are in low risk that would also swim with back and those other groups. But we also have they're not clubs, but they're what I would call similar to almost like a dance studio, a private wrestling studio, an MMA gym where they will go and have practices and lessons. I guess number 2, so there's that part of it. 2 is that immediate removal from the team? Is that what we're looking at? I guess is my next question.
Okay, this is my interpretation, if anybody else feels about it. I would say if it's a low-risk sport, it's a low-risk sport. That's fine, just like we let the golf person play golf, because that's not seen as something that's going to have transmittal. So for the swim or gymnastics, that's considered low risk. For the ones that aren't considered low risk, like dance, if it's within Dane County non-competitive, then they're under PHMDC rules just like we are. So that should be bubbled in that sense. So I'd be fine with it. If other members feel we should be stricter, obviously, I would speak up.
Are you asking for a definition of club?
Yes. And
So Aaron, are these like, it's not like, is it a membership or you pay for lessons?
so yes. So you're paying, say it's anywhere from $500 to $700, and then you would say on Sunday nights go there and practice.
Aaron, is it in a group or more private?
So it would be a group of anywhere from 5 to 10 to even potentially more.
Well, they couldn't within Dane County.
Well, what you're saying, I understand what you're saying, Dave. What I'm saying is what's happening. Those people have a mortgage to cover.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Are we boxing ourselves into
How do you
police?
regulate it?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you?
You regulate it as best you can, just like we can't regulate what every high school student or whatever is doing, but we can control our activity. And the other choice is to do what the medical committee said, shut it all down, other than low-risk sports would be done. That's what they said we should do. And they were pretty clear about it.
But if that group is under Dane County, we have to assume they're going to follow Dane County rules.
Yes.
So I think if we could make the club or the group or whatever it is within Dane County, we've sort of covered our bases.
It's the best we can, if we're gonna try and open something up, I see it as the best we can do. I get the whole argument that they're gonna go out and compete if they wanna go out and compete. And you know what? They are.
But
And the
you-
bad
you-
thing is, I
You
don't
said that a
want,
couple times and I agree. So
Yeah.
if we're trying to create a bubble, I think we should create a realistic bubble and not be as, we can't control everything. So we
Right.
say, you're in Dane County, okay.
Aaron, can you speak to why dance is considered high risk? Because I can't wrap my head around why that is in basketball as medium, because I played basketball and it's disgusting. And I don't see how that is possibly lower risk than dance.
No, I can't. I don't know
All
how
right,
they
thank
do
you.
their determination. So no, I don't know what occurs in dance that doesn't occur in basketball.
Right, like what are they doing in dance?
Yeah, no,
I'd say that, but either way, we're treating them the same.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter in that sense.
I guess the one thing I would add is, looks like we're trying to find a way to do some things. I just don't want something to be such an improbable thing for Aaron and Brian to try to navigate and enforce. So whatever we're trying to put forth has to be something that can be
Enforceable.
easily understood, and we're not trying to split hairs.
Right. I mean, I don't want to shut down the dance schools here in town by saying those girls have to pick between high school or
No.
dance class. That's not the point. The point is about the safety guidelines being followed and making sure that the other kids in our high school are allowed to do their activities too, not causing us to shut the high school down.
Are we
Could
missing
I
something?
suggest that we vote, I'm not calling it, but maybe we could vote on the last amendment, and if it fails, we could come up with a better plan that might be, try to accomplish what you're looking to do. Because as stated, that's a pretty global thing, and I don't know if you can modify it at this point.
Did you have something to say, Brian?
I just feel like it's becoming overly complicated. You still need to remember, these are kids. They're going to do what they're going to do. I've heard that repeatedly. We need to provide them an environment where they can still do what they do, their sport. So if we can provide a safe environment where they can still do that, I think that we do, and not make it overly complicated. And make these other rules, because what we're gonna do is just drive them away. And that's the last thing I wanna do. I want to provide them the space. And if we're not in school, and this is what they're doing, they're already isolated, and they're already bubbled. And so, I know that there's some higher risks to these sports, but I also know everything that we've ran this year has been successful. It's been well done, it's been safe, and we've been successful. And so, and I get the medical committee's recommendation. I do not want to just like chop this thing off and take this away from kids. It's important that they have this opportunity. We figure out a way to do it as safe as we can. And because they're already bubbled, they'll be in teams. If they're not in school, that eliminates a whole other issue, right? So if they're not coming into school, you're talking about 12 kids. Let's just pick the varsity basketball team or something, 12, 15 kids, and if they have an opportunity to do some things, that would be fantastic. If it has to get shut down, it gets shut down. If it becomes an issue or we can't manage it, that we'll know that right away. But just, we're making it overly complicated in the sense that we're not even giving it a chance. And I think that based on this fall with cross-country and golf and the things that we were able to do, we can do some of these things. And I know you guys said low-level stuff, but there's some, these guys worked hard to come up with plans to figure this out. Is it going to be super complicated? It absolutely is. But I think it's worth vetting and figuring out, can we do it? How much of a risk are we going to even have if we're not, those kids aren't in school yet. The big issue is come January. That's when we're trying to limit everything right now. The bigger issue is January. When we're coming back in, we have all these kids coming into the school. If you really wanted to try something, now's the time to try it as opposed to later.
Well, the thing is, you're bringing up that the sports programs we have done have been successful.
No.
Yes, because we shut down football. because we shut down soccer. We shut those ones down already. We only let the low-level ones happen, and it was successful. Now you want to start putting higher-level risk ones out there. Why did we shut down soccer? You know, and the thing is, I get what you're saying, they're bubbled now. They're bubbled from kids they don't hang around with in the high school. They're not bubbled from the community. Our community numbers are going through the roof, and we're gonna send them to counties that, Dane County has some of the lowest numbers in our area. You send them to Baraboo, those numbers are worse. And then you're gonna say that there's not gonna be the rules up there of Dane County. So we're not bubbling them in Dane County. We're sending them to a higher risk area in a higher risk sport, and then bringing them back, and then wondering why our numbers are gonna be too high in January. If we're not gonna try and bubble it, if we're not gonna try and protect it, I say we file the medical committee and we shut it down. And just like we did soccer and football and everything else. And we still ended up where we are. And I get they're gonna go play some other club team and everything like that, and that's really unfortunate because I'd like to open the high school. I'd like to say that high-risk sports and low and medium-risk sports come spring are okay, but if the kids, if parents and students in the winter season decide that they're just gonna go play wherever they want because they wanna play sports, and then the spring sports get shut down because the numbers stayed and we didn't do anything about it. I think we gotta do something other than just say, oh well, let them try and let the numbers stay where they are for the next month. And then we won't have anything in January either. Okay, Mark.
Dave, you make great points, but there's one difference between football and soccer. They're playing this spring. These
Not
kids,
yet.
well, if numbers allow us, they will. These kids don't have a second chance. They lost their postseason last March. They're gonna lose this season now. Some kids, it's the only thing they love, whether it's hockey, basketball, wrestling, dancing, and it's just gone. And so I agree, I don't want to make this so complex. First of all, I don't want to make a rule that I can't enforce. As a coach, I would never do that. If I can't enforce it, I'm not going to make the rule. It doesn't make any sense. But if we have them in a controlled environment, as Brian suggested, with just the practice portion as one of the proposals on the table, and then number support allowing the competition in the second semester, they get some season. And these kids, we've heard them for the last 3 months. This team and their teammates mean something to them. When they go to the non-school activity, it's an individual thing that's in their best interest. They want to be with a team that they love and care for. And so I think we can do some of the things we want without making this restrictive bubble. If we want to redefine that a little bit later, I think that's fine. I don't want to drive kids away, as Brian's talking about. And that's, you want to drive them away, that's exactly what this is going to do. We have a controlled environment. We can give them some sense of belonging and some rewards that mean something to them.
We don't even make a decision regarding the game plan at this point, but we can give them contact time or practice time. I mean, I know Aaron's got to put a schedule together, but.
So your motion, Mark, was, we've got like motions and amendments on the table right now?
2 amendments, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'd like to call the third amendment,
Second.
the second amendment, right, to vote.
Okay.
We hear it?
Call the question on the second amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
There's no debate on that. So the second amendment is about them not being allowed to practice or play with club or out-of-county activity. And we'll do it by roll. Mark?
No.
Judy?
No.
Bry?
No.
Joan?
No.
Mike?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the Second Amendment fails. We're back to the First Amendment, which, let's begin. Could you read us the First Amendment back just to make sure?
An amendment with a tentative date. I'm trying to read my shorthand here. An amendment with a tentative date to have the medium and high risk have their first competition no later than January 11th, and that will be before second semester, but 2 weeks after Christmas.
And allowing the practice beginning the start of the season.
Okay, so that's an amendment, which is basically setting the time frame. Any discussion on the amendment?
Which can be adjusted if COVID rates keep going up, right? You can come back to it.
We can come back and always have another motion.
No, can't do it.
In pencil, in pencil,
In
agree.
pencil, right, everything's in pencil.
So what does this idea of letting them practice mean for these sports? Because I know it's practice was for basketball in high school, it's playing games with people on your team. With wrestling, it's wrestling other people in your weight class. Is that allowed?
So by public health, 6 feet of social distance has to be maintained at all times for sports. So you would, you know, what an actual practice would look like would be more like a skills and drills session. You wouldn't necessarily, like in a wrestling practice, be able to actually physically wrestle another wrestler. Each sport, of course, is a little different that way. You know, what a basketball practice then looks like would be, you know, different than what maybe a hockey practice would look like and what they'd be able to do. But currently, the public health sports guidance requires 6 feet social distance maintained at all times.
And they'll have to wear masks.
Yep, they would all have to be masked during this time.
So what is the timeline again? Their first game would
Sure.
be,
So his amendment is that they practice at the start of season and that their tentative first date of competition is no later than January 11th.
So
if
they can
the-
start competing right away.
So if the Dane County bubble got going, they could compete prior to that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Jeff, you have a question or a comment?
I think you want to just clarify, because I just want to make sure we were clear in the wording, because the first competition being no later than January 11th means they could compete potentially before that. We must have one by the 11th.
Right.
So you're saying they could start competing right away?
In Mark's
Or did you mean
justification
no
was,
sooner
I
than-
want
No
them to
sooner,
wait
it
till
should
after
be-
the break.
it should have been no
No
sooner.
sooner, it should be no sooner.
That's
Oh.
Earlier than
Yeah,
January.
it should be no earlier than,
If this Dane County bubble got established,
to be revisited.
then we'd have to revisit this?
Yeah, and, you know, there are still some pros and cons to being part of that Dane County bubble in terms of how attractive it would be for our athletes. And if that'd be something they'd be willing to participate.
There's a lot of hurdles to go through to get that to happen. I mean, there's,
I don't think that's,
it's not a slam dunk.
it's, I personally, I think waiting on that is not gonna be not gonna bear any fruit.
I gotta say,
That's with no inside knowledge though.
there are tough hurdles for how Dane County would have to adjust some things for that to happen. I guess it worries me when I'm sitting here saying, is that attractive to our athletes? Because what are we talking about? Is it attractive to our athletes to follow the rules in Dane County? That's the thing I keep hearing, is that the athletes want to play without the rules. And to me, athletics is huge. I did tennis, that's my big thing. And I would have hated not to play doubles. The problem is, we're taking how many kids and saying that that's going to determine what's going to happen in our community to all the other kids who want to go to high school. And that's the part that's driving me crazy about this, because how many of our students do we hold back from just going to school because we're going to let the community numbers stay where they are?
I guess when I say it's may not be attractive to our athletes, I'm not talking about following Dane County public health rules. I'm talking about having the carrot of a conference or a state title out there for us. That would be the consideration there.
Mark, you had a comment?
Won't the consequences of getting COVID determine if we continue that? I mean, so it's not gonna go on forever. If something happens, it will stop.
Yeah, but the problem is, when that stops, if that's in early January and our numbers are bad, that means we're also not starting school on January 20th. Because the numbers are still bad. I mean, it's, the reason the medical community said shut it down is because they want the numbers to come down. If we keep playing with the risk of creating numbers, all we're doing is playing with the risk of opening the school.
I submit we could put a definition or a clarification post-vote that would indicate that, as Brian and I already said, that this January 11th is in pencil based upon numbers, COVID numbers, just like open school would be. If the numbers are up, I don't see how we can do it. If the numbers are down, like school, then we could do it.
But I also want to think, I would hope it'd run this way, so we have a team of, say, 12, 15, I'm just going to pick basketball again. They decide to not play for the school, we still have 15 people that will step up to play.
Yeah.
That we're not the best 15, but they want to do something.
And they want to be part of something.
Are we still going to have a season? Are we going to be behind that? Just bumping up 15 more kids to play? Or is it not going to be worth it to our school or coaches?
You know,
just asking. Cause,
I would think you play with who you have.
Because that's the heart of, you know.
Yeah, that's
of athletics.
Next man up.
You know, next man up, exactly.
And if you look at a start date for our medium and high risk of January 11th, to give you an idea, the wrestling state tournament is February 11th, currently scheduled for February 11th. And if you, when Mark was, Coach Natsky was giving his public comment there, may have, some of you may not have been, may have just missed that part, but WI regulations no longer allow for tournaments. So we're only, in terms of wrestling, you're only allowed for dual matches, and you have to have at least a week in between each match. So you're looking at probably 3 wrestling matches, and then you're into the playoff season. So it's going to have, that January 11th date is going to impact each sport differently in terms of what they're going to have for a quote-unquote regular season. So that's, I just want to make sure that that's out there. Our sports, our individual sports, whether they're high, are probably going to be, you know, which would be wrestling in terms of the medium and high risk, would be impacted a little bit differently. The other dance, Petra, the student that was here, you know, she mentioned that, you know, the WACPC has kind of slid back their tournaments, their playoffs back. So there would be, if we're waiting until January 11th, on the flip side, they would still have I don't say a healthy, but they'd have a more significant quote-unquote regular season potentially. So that date is going to have a different impact. So if you depending on what group that community member is in, whether that's wrestling, basketball, hockey, or dance, or something like that.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, Aaron. And yet, the reason I picked that date is it gives us 2 weeks after Christmas.
Well,
you know,
that's I just wanted to make sure we were
trying to let things settle down a little bit before we actually begin the actual competition. So that's the logic, and maybe flawed. But I think we need to hear that too.
So we're just voting on the amendment of allowing practice and then no games until, for the medium and high risk sports, for no games until after January 11th or after.
I mean, I'll just say I don't think it's a good idea, but I'm gonna vote for it, so I can bring a motion to reconsider later if we need to.
I didn't understand that.
I said that I don't think it's a good idea, I agree with the medical committee, but I'm gonna vote in favor of it, so I can bring a motion to reconsider later if necessary.
When you say reconsider later, what are you talking about?
If you vote in support of a motion and then want to change your vote, you can bring a reconsideration of a motion.
Mean tonight?
No,
No,
down the road.
at a future meeting.
Oh,
Future meeting.
okay.
I'm gonna vote against it because if we're not gonna put any restrictions of bubbling it, then I just think we're going against the medical advice that we've said and brought in.
So are we voting?
Yes. Well, unless there's another comment. So this is just on the amendment. And Mike,
Aye.
Ingridson,
Aye.
Joan,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and I vote no. And now we're on to the main motion. Which, would you like to state that, please?
Sure, low risk can practice and compete within and outside of the county. No, that's not the main one, sorry. Medium and high risk practice according to the PHMDC guidelines, and if numbers go down or a Dane County league is formed.
And they're allowed to practice and
Effectively,
no first games until January 11th.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Same reasons last time.
Okay, Mark?
Aye.
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
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 And none. And we are with that. Okay, so that is now the end of co-curriculars. We do need to go back to the open and consideration school because we did not take up the idea of the $50 fee for those going in person, which initially that fee was to try and help cover some of the sanitization costs and things like that. Based on the referendum, we now have that flexibility to cover it on the budget. I'd like the board to consider a motion to remove the $50 fee for those choosing in person.
What we would do is if you agreed to remove that fee, then we wouldn't assess it moving forward. And anybody who's already paid it, we would reimburse it back through like the Taher account.
So is there a motion to remove and reimburse the $50 fee for in-person attendance?
I'll make that motion.
Brian, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Joan. Any discussion? And basically, my discussion of it would be, thank you to the community for passing the referendum to allow us to get this covered. And we'll go to a vote. Mike?
I'm gonna abstain because I already paid it myself twice.
There you go.
Well, is there a way to allow the refund be voluntary, so that if they choose to have it, it's refunded, if they choose to, some families, the kids have been here since August, and actually some of that's been used at that time, I'm guessing. And so I know in some of the non-school activities that you pay a fee to participate in, there's an option for total refund or to voluntarily leave it in. And so I suggest we might want to consider that as an option.
So you would like to make an amendment to allow it to be a voluntary?
So moved.
Or should we call
So
them,
amended.
they have to opt in for the refund? Or opt out of the refund?
I think we notified them that refund's available, they can choose not to take it.
Okay, so they'd have to let us know they didn't want it.
This is an amendment?
Yes. So it would be an opt-out version, so
Might
they
be
have to
eas-
tell
It
us.
might be easier to, that we ask them to opt in, and if they don't opt in,
Then we don't give them the
then they don't
refund.
get it, yes,
So they have to tell us they want the refund.
yes.
Okay.
I would just give it
Right, can we just give it to them
I would
if
just
they
give it
want
to
to
'em.
donate it?
Well, you can vote down the amendment.
Okay.
So we're just gonna vote on the amendment, which is about the opting in to get the refund. Mike, you have to abstain. Judy?
No.
Joan?
No.
No. No.
Aye.
I'll vote no
Too much
also.
paperwork for
So-
somebody.
So it fails.
Trying to make
We're back to
it
the
easy.
original motion of sending the $50 back to those who paid it and not charging it on the future. Mike? You're abstaining? Judy?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay. Now we're back, Carl.
Wonderful.
My wife's
$100 for Christmas.
All right, committee reports. I don't think we have any action on any of these committees.
There are committee reports, there were nothing with action. I did want to bring up one comment though. I noticed in the HR that there was a discussion about moving to true time, and that due to that, hourly employees would not be paid for a 4-week period if that happens. Is there any reason we couldn't pay them their average hours for those 2 weeks, and then in the following 2 weeks deduct or add based on what the previous 2 weeks were? I've had something similar happen when I was in construction, and they were gonna have this big payroll problem. So they just paid because most of us worked 40 hours. They paid us all 40 hours, and then the following week, anybody who missed a few hours, it was got deducted in the following week. It just seems a long time for hourly employees to go a month without pay. Would that be workable?
I'm not sure I understand exactly the concept you're sharing, Dave.
Okay, so let's say you have an hourly employee in this system, and in a 2-week period, they would normally have 80 hours of pay.
Right.
Now, let's say they take 1 day off, so they would lose 8 hours in that, and normally only get 32. But because of this system, you couldn't really deal with anything. You pay everybody their average, so that person would receive 80 hours in a 2-week period where they really missed a day. Then the following 2-week period, you adjust that one by 8 hours in order to put them back at their correct hours. Rather than say, we're not gonna pay anybody for a month.
I think what you're describing is the annualized, or very much like the annualized pay that we currently do, which is just an average of the expected hours for workers over the course of the year spread out across the pay periods. And so that is the exact opposite of the true time pay, which is pay people for the hours that they work.
Right.
The reason being, well, I mean, there's a number of reasons why we put it into place, or the board kind of directed us to go put it in place, was the accuracy of paying people exactly for the hours that they worked. The fact that it takes out opportunities for error in terms of calculations, either both on the employee's part, entry part, the payroll's calculation part. It would eliminate some of the lost time cards that we have experienced and delays in proving it. But the downside is that it works as if, it works how basically almost all hourly positions work, in that you work a pay period, 2 weeks, submit that pay, submit those hours, and you're paid at the end of the next pay period. Because again, payroll is a multi-day process. It's not a, some people think it's, you put your hours in, switch gets hit, your check gets produced. That is not at all what happens. And so the challenge is the delay. What the committee had talked about was the idea of giving ample and far in advance notice so that folks can plan for such that, for that coming. And we're talking about advance notice of at least 6 months so that folks have an opportunity to build up or potentially use, build up those funds and or potentially use it in conjunction with the back pay process that, we also pay people. And so hopefully those two methods would allow folks to avoid that difficult spot of the one pay period delay.
It just strikes me strange that if you're collecting the hourly pay periods of them, why you're averaging one, which was a previous pay period, suddenly you go 4 weeks before. I mean, I'm an hourly employee. My week is Monday through Sunday. And our pay goes in on, our hours go in on Sunday, and we're paid on Tuesday. And this company is nationwide and has 2,000 some employees. Yet they can pay the entire nation in 2 days. And we're sitting there saying we're gonna hold, I don't know. I'd like to find some way that the first 2 weeks is somehow average so that they're not going, hourly employees tend not to have the setup to go, we're gonna go a month without pay.
As a board, can't we ask you to try to find some way to resolve this? I'm with Dave on this one, in that a lot of hourly wage people are going paycheck to paycheck. They've got bills they've got to pay. To ask them to defer their utilities on the 15th of the month, because they're not going to get paid till the 30th of the month, puts them in a financial situation that is unfortunate at the least. So if there's some way that you can find if you can resolve this so that they don't have to have this 4-week gap, that's what I'd like to ask you to do.
Why don't I suggest we just bring this topic back at our next meeting next month, and we can talk about what that process of transitioning to true time looks like, and we can investigate if there are other options than what we're presenting. But it is part of the transition, but maybe that would help the full board then understand what the issues are, and we can see if there's any solutions.
Okay, the other committees had no motion items, so unless anyone has any questions about the other minutes?
I just did read the equity committee minutes as well, and it looks like my kudos to your committee. They're moving forward, and they've got a real sense of direction, it looks like, so appreciative of the work they're doing.
Yeah, if you watched the meeting, it went off really well. Neither Brian nor myself nor our co-chair were there, so Tim did great.
Yeah, they don't need you.
Yeah, I know, that's great.
Maybe that should be a standing motion. So that takes us to administrative reports. First is about the high school field house configuration, which we talked a bit about before.
We talked a little bit about it. What I want to bring to your attention tonight, and I'm seeking your support for, at a previous meeting, you approved us replacing the entire floor, so I appreciate that motion and that support. I think, Mike, at that meeting, you said, is there anything else we should be doing with the configuration of the gym? At that moment in time, we had not brought anything forward. A couple of our coaches and FIED folks came forward, talked to Aaron and John, asked me to attend a meeting. I thought their proposal made a lot of sense, because I think it addresses some issues that we have in that gym with regards to instructional space. So I think by adding 2 more curtains, it adds another instructional area, and actually they felt it could actually add a part of another one, that if you had some small groups where they sometimes have kids come down from the weight room program, or sometimes we do adaptive PE, that would fit in there. So from a scheduling standpoint, I think there's positivity to it. The other aspect is, if you've ever been in there when we have a lot of our youth games, etc., when we have the side courts, parents, spectators are navigating their way through the court, and by moving some of the basketball goals and aligning the lines on the floor to a different configuration, we can keep more of our folks in the stands as opposed to on the court. I think it's a better configuration. So volleyball and basketball coaches were involved. Aaron was part of the conversation. A few of our coaches are also the Phi Ed folks who teach in that space. So I thought their proposal made a lot of sense. Anything that can add more instructional space that frees up our ability to schedule, I think is a real positive piece. John has gone through and taken a look at the plan, and he has two different groups. One is called Gym Boys, the other one is called Padlock Bleachers, and they've gone through and given us a quote on making those changes with regards to the hoops, scoreboard movements, and the curtains. And you can see that is articulated in the board book for you. One is just, the Gym Boys quote is just under 70,000. Padlock Brothers is 87. And that is for those items. I know that you've worked with Stocker Floors, who's doing actually finishing the floor and the lining. Were there any additional costs associated with that, John? Because I know that was a piece that we were getting these things ready for board book, so I wanted to give you a chance if there's any updates from when we released this last week.
Yeah, Stalker had some negligible costs at 3,000 or under to add additional paint product.
Yep. From your conversations with the two folks who gave us an estimate on this, do you have a sense of kind of either one of the products or any of the vetting of that issue that can help guide us tonight?
No, Randy, keep in mind, it's a ballpark quote because of the time frame in which we had to pull these companies in to quote this. They did a great job doing what they could with the short time frame to measure and scope, but without going to factories and getting teams together and comparing apples to apples with the curtain product, for example.
Sure.
There may be some discrepancy there with cost if the curtain product is different from each other.
Right.
So I would take that number as a ballpark number, a rough estimate, because that's what we have today with the short time frame in order to get these pulled together.
I guess from my perspective, I would ask for the board's consideration to give us some latitude to work through that process, with John and Steve being a connection with the two folks who quoted this and to vet this out. The hard part with this is you have a window to really accomplish some of these pieces with the floor going in, the painting going down, and then the movement of those. So, but I think that the plan makes a lot of sense. From how we would pay for this type of an issue, I think you have certainly with there are some dollars that we will be talking about with that at the budget committee with regards to Fund 41. There were COVID expenses we paid out of there that would probably fit well within our referendum pieces, which then allows us some flexibility within that fund to take on a project like this.
So do you need a vote on this, or do you just want
I
us to
do
give
need
you
a vote on this.
flexibility?
Obviously, there's two quotes in front of you, and as John said, we do have we have some vetting to do yet, and I would ask that you give the administration, Steve, John, and I the opportunity to work through those pieces with regards to then granting the work to the group that best fits our needs and our cost.
If I make a motion, I support that idea.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
All right. The one piece I just want to bring to your attention, it's always a challenging piece when we do a facility, is kind of what's going in the middle of the gym. Right now, I mean, I guess I just wanted to get a little feedback from the board. It could be blank, where there isn't any logo in the middle of the gym. The other one that we had in the gym, what we'd be replacing if you replaced it apples to apples was, I believe, just the block W with the wave through it. That's what was there. So I guess I'm just looking to see if there's any feedback from the board on guidelines of how to move forward with how you'd like to proceed with any design in the middle of the gym. And I believe, John, that has to be done at the same time. You can't do that at a later time.
I do believe that's correct, yeah.
You know, painting and
We'll
floor
have to
stamp.
finish
What's
over it.
currently there?
What's up?
What's currently?
It was just a block W.
Okay.
It used to be the W with the spear, that was removed a number of years ago, and then it went to the block W that said Waunakee, or it said Warriors, or something like that.
Is the wave of the future?
What would you like to see?
Don't know.
Yeah,
Brian, what would you like to see?
yeah, no pressure, Brian.
Well, we got the coaches out here.
I don't want to ask the coaches, I've been there before.
I would say what was there before was fine with me, but, you know, it was, I think it said Warriors too.
I think it said Warriors, I think it was just a block W.
I think we need to have a whole discussion about the W's in this district. And until we have something like that with Annie,
Let Annie decide.
There you go, no pressure. I guess one of the questions is, we could go and put the block W back in, as Brian said. We could leave it blank. I guess the question I would have for Stocker Floors is, once we do it, do you only get a chance to redo that when you redo all the striping on the floors, which you do like every 15 years? It's not a short-term piece, that's the, I guess.
It's not in the wood, but it's a paint on or stain on.
You paint it or you stain it on the wood.
Right.
And then you
finish over the
clear
top.
coat over it. And so then you're only going to be able to, when you
refinish.
sand the wood down again. I believe that's the answer for that.
I believe that as well.
But I don't want there to be any surprises as we move forward.
Just stay away from the arrowhead and.
Yep. Yep.
Maybe we should change the colors.
What's that?
Maybe we should change the colors.
No, I don't think so.
Really, it's getting late.
Throw a little bit
Yeah, I was
accent in there.
If you
We got
check-
another 3 hours.
Is the board okay if we kind of vet that out?
Yes,
as long as we-
yes.
All right,
Please do.
I just want to make sure so that we're on the same page. Thank you for your support of that.
Yeah, nice beige. is
Judy would
obviously-
pick orange.
Next is consideration for a DPI waiver for educator effectiveness,
Yes.
mainly over staff evaluation.
Right.
components. Second,
All in favor.
any discussion?
I think, I don't want to jump over this. I think at least whatever public is left, they need to understand why we're doing this.
Sure.
And that the integrity of what's going on in the classroom isn't affected by this.
Right, absolutely. I mean, this is the educator effectiveness evaluation model is a very strictly prescribed model by the state. It has many different components to it that our administrators are working with our staff on. And when you are in the type of instructional environment that we're in right now, some of this becomes very challenging to do it with fidelity all the way through. I think it's also a piece that as far as we've looked at it, the bullet points that I articulated, the student and school learning outcomes, the professional practice goals, maintaining our feedback process with staff, and then just maintaining staff at the same level that they're at, because it's a 3-year cycle. We're either in a full evaluation year, or you're in a monitoring year, or a formative assessment year. We'll keep them, so whatever year you would move forward into the future. And if we had any staff that were first year of employment or who were on a plan of improvement, we would go through the full cycle with them. So we've vetted this very specifically amongst our administrative team. We've talked to members of our teacher leadership. We feel that this is a good place to go forward. We can still provide evaluative feedback to our staff, but the waiver allows us the ability to move aside of some of the things that are specific within the state requirements. So there is a waiver for this, so we're requesting it.
So whether it's teachers, virtual or face-to-face, those who are scheduled to go through the process as you've outlined, they will be going through these hoops by their building principals, assistant principals, etc.
Correct. So we're just going to be utilizing those bullet points generally.
A more finite focus.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
So we have a
Motion was
motion
made by
to.
Mike, and who was it seconded by?
Mike made it, I second. Oh,
Yeah, I thought Dave did.
Joe, I think Joe did.
Okay, I thought it was a female.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry. Did your voice change?
I don't remember.
Thank you, guys.
We like Joe, Joe did. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So that was unanimous. Next is consideration of applicants for expulsion hearing officer, and basically I have two proposals on the table.
What I had shared with you that I would bring this back in October. It's November. So sorry about being a little bit late with this. This was a piece that we had John Anderson has been serving as the interim expulsion hearing officer for a little over the last year, and has done a great job for us. But as our conversations came forward at our reorganizational meeting where we normally appoint our expulsion hearing officer, there was a desire to see who else may want to do this work. I worked with Kirk Strang just to see what other attorneys in the area are available for this type of work that he's identified and he would recommend to me. He contacted a few of them on our behalf, a few of them declined, but two people did bring forth their proposals, one being John Anderson, who we've worked with for the last year and a half, as I've said, and the other one is Douglas Whitty from Boardman and Clark. I think both of these folks, I don't know Douglas, but speaking with Kirk and reviewing his materials, I think he has the background to be able to do this, and certainly I have experience working with John. They've put forth, their proposals are a little bit different in scope as far as how they've written them. John's taken an approach of really kind of a flat fee for some of the services. I had asked him to review that from kind of how he was operating under his previous hourly schedule, and Douglas has given us a range of dollars, and I'm assuming that's built off of who's kind of doing some of the behind-the-scenes work and his hourly rate himself. A couple of things that there was a few nuances as far as that Mr. Anderson put together, Attorney Anderson, with regards to a stipulated agreement. That's usually one where we have agreement and we don't go through the whole hearing, but there's agreement between the parents and the administration that goes through a shorter hearing process, and then there's the full hearing when there isn't agreement and a full hearing is held. So I wanted to bring those to the board for your consideration. If there's anything additional information you would want before we made a decision, I'm happy to seek that out and bring that back to you. I'm hoping in the model that we're in, we don't have a lot of expulsions, and we haven't had one yet, thank goodness. But I do think it's important for us to have kind of a solid candidate moving forward who we can appoint.
The biggest thing I saw, and probably Mike's going to have more to say on it, was the difference of one of them is charging you $300 an hour, whatever that takes. The other one had a cap where basically he's charging $450 an hour, which looks, a lot more, but then caps a hearing at $450, although a stipulated one. And then anything that wouldn't be stipulated, he caps at $700.
Right.
So you're looking at basically 2.5 hours of work for the other attorney. On a hearing, how much time roughly do we look at?
Now, a stipulated hearing is probably half hour, 45 minutes usually. If it's a full hearing, they can go anywhere from hour and a half to 8 hours, depending on what the issue is.
And that's not including prep time, that's just actual time. The rule of thumb for lawyers a lot of times is you should probably be prepping 2 to 3 hours for every hour you're actually working.
Right.
So, I mean, I had a really strong reaction to it, seeing Attorney Anderson basically saying, well, his normal hourly rate is $600 an hour, but he's discounting it. And he's also basically saying this is more or less a flat fee because he's done this so much, you can kind of turn through a form, which is what you're supposed to do.
Oh, well, yeah, he has a couple of pages.
Of course. So, but here's the thing. So does the other attorney, but he's still charging the hourly rate. And you know what? You're not getting 0.1 hours for that. You're getting more than that. So I really appreciated them putting this together, but I was really strongly in favor of Attorney Anderson, especially since he had done a good job stepping in for us already. And he has a simple setup for how this works. It's not how many hours it is going to take. It's pretty straightforward. And I find honesty in that that's important when you're hiring a lawyer.
Okay. So are you making a motion for Mr. Anderson?
Yes, I'll make a motion for Mr. Anderson.
Second. And I still cringe about my time with MATC. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
have some congratulations of some of our girls golfers who are academic all-state. Allie Kinzel, Sydney Grimm, and Natalie Haig. So congratulations to them. That's
Yes.
wonderful accomplishments on them, both on the course and also academically.
And that takes us to the consent agenda, which we can take all at once, of which there's really kind of only 2 items, 3. Or any of it can be broken out. Is there a motion?
I move we take the entire consent agenda in one vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Brian. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and the consent agenda passes unanimously. Takes us on to board business, of which we have a convention workshop coming up. The State Education Convention is going to be in January again, but it's going to be 100% virtual, which is helpful in some ways and in some ways still not. So I'm sure you've all received the mailings recently from them about their virtual convention. And so the normal thing would be to let Rebecca know if you're interested in attending, so they can put it together to get the rate. If there's no questions about that, then board listening sessions, you have the sign-up sheets in front of you. Please mark which ones you wish or are able to attend, and then with Rebecca, we'll get through and make sure we have no more than 3 at each one. They will be virtual over a Zoom, so you can use your phone or computer or whatever. Are you going to be setting up the 3 board members as the hosts?
We haven't.
Yeah, one of the questions I guess we have to do is think about how we are going to, in order to set those up, you need to have an account, and a district account, so that's either me to set it up. Annie has a similar one. Mike, I think Mike and Dave, you both have school accounts too that we set up. So I mean, there's a few different options. I guess I just like your feedback on how you would like to do that.
Well, this has always been done, that it's just the staff with the board members. So I think what we're going to have to do is have it so that there's at least a board member in each one that either currently has an account or we get an account set up for them. And we can work that out between now and those days.
I don't think it's fair to have, that the 2 of you would have to be at every meeting.
No.
So
Like I
think
said,
just
or-
where there's,
As long as people
Well,
are
isn't there we
comfortable
just
running
need to
a
ask
Zoom,
them?
which unfortunately we've probably all gotten comfortable at running Zoom meetings.
Yep.
So it'll work.
And we'll just,
Okay.
current practice for public comments, meeting attendance, and live streaming committee meetings. There was gonna, Randy and I have been talking about the fact that we're doing the live streaming and allowing electronic submission of public comments. As we were looking at opening the school district more and more, some of us had talked before that some of the COVID things we put in place, as we remove COVID restrictions on the school, we should consider that with our meeting, but based on the current situation, and we're not really opening the schools fully at this point, I think we should kind of hold that off.
Right.
If we're not going to do it with our schools, we shouldn't do it here.
Agreed.
But as we go forward, there probably will be, when we get the schools more open, then our board meetings will become more open. We'll probably make it that people have to attend in person and make comments. But right now, we'll still be doing the electronic version. No legislative update that I know of.
No.
And correspondence. We do need to talk about the board retreat, though.
Yes.
So I talked with Randy about where we could hold it to have a better atmosphere. So we were talking about holding it at Heritage in the large group room. So we're going to try and hold it there, but we obviously have to pick a date as to when we want to try and hold that meeting. I would think possibly we have our board meeting the second week of December. Would the third week of December is already hitting into Christmas.
I don't think December's the time to do the retreat.
You think early January?
January would be better, I would think.
Then our regular board meeting's on the 11th.
Martin Luther King Day.
week after has Martin Luther King on Monday, but we could hold it on,
Or it could be any day that week.
yeah. So we're looking at the week of the 18th.
Of January?
Well, we just looked at
This
the
is the-
convention that week.
Oh, that is the 20th through the 22nd, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
so closely.
Would you want to,
December works better for me, but I'm
probably in
having
December,
surgery that first week, and I'm gonna be late hobbling around for a while.
if we did in December, you'd almost have to do it the week of the 14th, of which we have our board meeting on Monday. We could do it the same week as the board meeting.
What does Thursday look like?
Thursday, the 17th? I'm fine with that.
6 a.m.
We would start at 5 o'clock
Yeah.
PM. Yeah, not AM. I get up at 5 AM, but probably most of you don't. So 5 PM on the 17th. I'm not hearing a no, so we'll need a motion to hold that meeting.
That's so moved.
Second.
That'll be at the Heritage LGA.
Yes.
December 17th.
And are we putting a time frame? 5 to what?
8.
Okay.
People who want specific items discussed at that meeting, I'd appreciate if you'd email it to me, just to make sure we put it into the agenda, so that we have enough time. And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. So that was unanimous. And future agendas and other meetings. We need committee meetings.
Steve, you already have a budget meeting scheduled, is that correct?
Yeah, we have it for the following Monday.
All right, thank you. And Brian, we need HR at all right now, or do you want to hold on that until we get after budgeting?
I think it's prudent for us to wait until we get the budget meeting in and then get towards the end of the month, we'll know better what we're doing.
All right, very good. You're okay, Tim, with curriculum?
We need a meeting.
You do need a meeting, so the
Yeah.
curriculum committee does need a meeting.
So I sent out some possible dates to the committee on, I think, Tuesday last week, so.
I responded.
You did.
I did not.
No, and
Because
so.
I thought we were talking about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm open.
Yeah, that's fine. So Mark, why don't you lead with your dates and then.
I don't have it written down, I sent it to you.
Okay. Well, it's up then. Hang on.
I think everyone but one worked, Tim.
Yeah.
Oh.
How about
Yeah,
the-
so, we could do the 18th or the 19th of this month in the afternoon, maybe next week.
About the 18th.
Works for me.
3 o'clock, Judy, does that work for you?
Yep.
3 o'clock?
Wonderful, thank you.
Oh, could we do 3:15?
Sure.
Would 3:30
Would
work
3:30 be
better?
better?
I just have a kid I'm working with until 3. I'm
Let's do
good at
3:30.
3:30? 3:30?
3:30 is fine.
Yep.
Need to set it up now, don't we? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that the only other meeting?
I think that's all we needed.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wait for Jack, but he's not here.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and we should tell the 40-some people on our YouTube channel that they should go turn their computer off, because I can't believe they're still watching. Thank you very much.